concentré sur les bons employés.
Le numéro 2.
Good evening, everyone. Bonne soirée à tous. I guess everybody wasn't just here for the concert, I'm assuming. But that's okay. Thanks for sticking around. We'll get this meeting started. Item 1, roll call. All members except for Councillor Lorraine are present and accounted for. I'll ask everyone to please stand for the prayer and the national anthem. We had some nice music, so everybody should be in a singing mood. So. Attendu que le Canada est fondé sur des principes qui reconnaissent la suprématie de Dieu et la primauté du droit, prenons un moment de réflexion personnelle. Whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law, let us take a moment of personal reflection. Everyone. It's always nice when we have a packed house and we get some singing going on. Everybody can hear me? Yeah? Okay. Item 4, additions, deletions, or amendments. We have a few changes. We're going to remove item 20, section 2, reduction of paid hours affecting income to level of service for an identifiable individual under the closed session. That is removed. We will add items 18C and D for Councillor Associates. She'll be talking about the tree lighting and the country concert Christmas concert. Okay, anything else to add, members of council? Need a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Associate, seconded by Councillor Tarnowski. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. So a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Tarnowski, seconded by Conseil Brisson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Item 6, disclosure of pecuniary interest. I see none. Item 7, adoption of minutes, regular council minutes of November 18th, 2019, and special council minutes of November 25th, 2019. Motion to approve the following minutes as presented. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Tarnowski, seconded by Conseiller Bisson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Item 8, presentations. A, recognition of citizens. I have to admit that this is one of the better parts that I have in my job. So I'll just speak a little bit to why we're here this evening. Bonne soirée à tous. Ce soir, j'ai l'honneur de reconnaître deux individus. This evening, I have the honor to recognize two individuals. On December 31st of 2018, Mrs. Elaine Bourgette of Embrun decided to get some fresh air. She felt warm inside and thought being outside for a short moment to cool down would help clear her mind. Unfortunately for Elaine, her short moment would turn into 6 hours. As Elaine slipped on some ice and fell outside, she shattered her right shoulder and broke her arm. Unable to lift herself up, she curled up in a ball in -6-degree weather until 7 a.m. Monsieur Bertrand, qui conduisait, a remarqué Madame Bourgette à terre et a tout de suite tourné de bord pour venir porter assistance. Sans cellulaire sur lui, il a couru au bâti avoisinant et a trouvé de l'aide de Mademoiselle Brigitte Lantier. Together, Monsieur Bertrand and Miss Lantier proceeded to bring blankets and cover Mrs. Bourgette, all the while speaking with her to prevent her from falling into unconsciousness. By the time Madame Bourgette reached the hospital, her core temperature had dropped to 30 degrees and suffered numerous frostbites to her body. She spent the next 2.5 months recovering in the hospital. Without the quick actions of these two individuals, there is a high probability that Madame Bourgette would no longer be with us here today. De la part du conseil municipal, je suis fier de reconnaître Mademoiselle Lantier et Monsieur Bertrand pour leur acte héroïque. Vous avez sauvé une vie cette journée-là. On behalf of Municipal Council, I'm proud to honor Miss Lantier and Monsieur Bertrand for your heroic act. You both saved a life that day. Congratulations. Je vais demander à Monsieur Bertrand et Madame Lantier, s'il vous plaît, de venir en avant. On va vous présenter avec un certificat de reconnaissance municipale puis avec une médaille. Alors, le conseil et les résidents de la municipalité de Russell désirent vous rendre hommage pour votre acte héroïque d'avoir aidé et possiblement sauvé la vie de Mme Elaine Bourgette le 31 décembre 2018. Alors, and I'll also ask Madame Elaine Bourgette to come up. I think you should be definitely part of the presentation. As I said at the beginning, it is definitely a highlight of my job to make presentations like that, to recognize the incredible people we have in this community. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. With that said, we will continue on to the next item of our agenda. Item 9, delegations petition. Item A, delegation presented by Candice Vetter and John McDonnell, CPAWS Ottawa Valley, Save Our Lake presentation. I believe as well Maddie Claudia Vansky is part of this presentation.
Am I on?
I believe so.
Thank you.
No.
Maybe it's just me.
You gotta be close to the mic.
Yeah. Is it better?
That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay. I always have a hard time with that. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Thank you very much for letting us give this presentation tonight. The purpose of this slideshow is to show council and residents that the old shale brick quarry north of Russell is now a lake.
There you go.
Here we are. Okay. It has been a lake since 2009, the last time it was pumped to the quarry floor. Residents living near the lake have been keeping an eye on it. We and the scientists who know about the lake agree that it should be made into a conservation area, but there are two barriers to that. The first one was finding an organization to help us pay for it. For that, the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, the Ottawa Valley chapter, has offered to help us acquire the property and apply for various forms of funding. John McDonnell, the CPAWS OV Executive Director, is here with us tonight. The second barrier is that Michelle Taggart, one of the principals in the Taggart companies which own the property, told John they were not interested in selling it. She also recently stated the property would make a good subdivision. Habitat destruction of Quarry Lake and the land around it should never be allowed, not in any form. The reasons are in this slideshow, which is now part of the record, and I thank you very much for that. Also, Mr. Mayor, thank you and Dominic for meeting with me the other day, last week, and for your assurance that the property will not be allowed to be zoned for industrial or residential use. And thanks for sharing the reasons. As I understand it, the official plan forbids it. It holds groundwater in an aquifer that local residents and farms depend on, and the Ministry of Natural Resources forbids it because the shale is a provincially protected resource. So our goal now is to make sure the Taggarts know they cannot use it, that no one can but us. We would still need permission from MNR, but we think that's doable. Our conservation would be consistent with some of their uses. Other organizations are willing to help too. Some of them are the Nature Conservancy of Canada, the Citizens Environmental Stewardship Association East of Ottawa, Nature Canada, the Council of Canadians, I think the Russell and District Horticultural Society, and the Ottawa Field Naturalist Club, Ecology Ottawa, the Hold the Line Campaign, and Women for Nature. And local service organizations are also probably coming on board. They just have to verify it at meetings. So Mr. Mayor, councillors, what we're seeking at this time is assurance that the council supports this project and will help us overcome obstacles. Thank you very much.
Bonsoir, Monsieur le maire, conseiller, conseillère. Est-ce que vous m'entendez bien?
Oui.
Merci, j'ai pas une voix qui porte. Merci beaucoup de nous avoir permis de faire cet exposé ce soir. Le but de ce diaporama est de montrer au conseil et aux résidents que la vieille carrière aux briques de schiste argileux au nord de Russell est maintenant un lac. Il date depuis 2009, la dernière fois qu'il a été pompé jusqu'au sol de la carrière. Les résidents vivant à proximité du lac le surveillent. Nous et les scientifiques qui connaissent le lac convenons que celui-ci devrait être transformé à une zone de conservation, mais il y a deux obstacles à cela. Le premier était de trouver une organisation pour aider à payer pour cela. La Société pour la nature et les parcs du Canada, la section de la vallée de l'Ottawa, a offert de nous aider à accueillir les propriétés et à faire une demande de financement. John McDonnell, directeur exécutif de SNAP, est ici avec nous ce soir. Monsieur McDonnell, merci. La deuxième obstacle est de Michelle Taggart, l'une des responsables des sociétés Taggart, qui est propriétaire de la propriété, a dit à John que qu'elle n'était pas intéressée à une vente. Elle a également récemment déclaré que la propriété constituerait un bon lot de développement urbain. La destruction de l'habitat du lac Quarry et des terres qui l'entourent ne devait jamais être autorisée sous aucune forme. Les raisons sont dans ce diaporama qui fait maintenant partie du dossier public. Merci beaucoup. Monsieur le maire, les conseillers et conseillères, merci à vous et Dominique de m'avoir rencontré. Je parle aussi bien sûr pour Candice. Et pour votre assurance que la propriété ne sera pas autorisée à être zonée pour un usage industriel ou résidentiel. Merci de partager les raisons suivantes. Nous comprenons que le plan officiel l'interdit. Il contient les eaux souterraines dans une aquifère dont dépendent les résidents et les exploitations agricoles avoisinantes. Le ministère des Richesses naturelles l'interdit car le schiste argileux est une ressource protégée par la province. Notre objectif est donc maintenant de faire en sorte que les Tigers sachent qu'ils ne peuvent pas utiliser, que personne ne le peut, mais que nous. Nous aurions toujours besoin de l'autorisation du MRM, mais nous pensons que c'est faisable. D'autres organisations sont également disposées à aider. Certains d'entre eux sont la Société pour la nature et les parcs du Canada, Conservation de la nature Canada, Club des naturalistes d'Ottawa, Écologie Ottawa, les conseils des Canadiens, les organisations de services locales se joignent à nous. Certains de leurs membres sont ici ce soir pour montrer leur soutien. Donc, je crois que le Russell District Horticultural Society en est un. Monsieur le maire, conseiller et conseillère, ce que nous recherchons pour le moment, c'est l'assurance que le conseil appuie ce projet et nous aidera à surmonter les obstacles. Merci pour votre attention.
Merci beaucoup, Thank you very much, Madame. Thank you very much, Candice. As Candice mentioned, we did have a meeting earlier last week, late last week, I should say, and, with myself and our municipal planner, Madame Dominique Tremblay, which, Madame Tremblay, maybe you can just reassure everyone that the possibility of it being turned into residential area or turned into a landfill site will not be happening.
Good evening. So the property is designated the mineral aggregate under the official plan of the United County of Prescott Russell. Therefore, since they have a license, it's not permitted at this time to have any official plan amendment that would allow for anything else than the quarry at the moment.
Right. And in regards to subdivisions, as Madame Taggart has suggested, it's way outside our village boundaries. There's no municipal services at that location. It can't be done.
Yeah, so technically subdivision are permitted under the official plan inside the township boundaries, which is, like you mentioned, far away from the Russell village boundaries, so it would not be permitted at this point to have a subdivision.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, I wish you all the best in your negotiations with Taggart to acquire this property. And I can't speak for members of council, but if ever you get to a point where you have bought the property and you are willing to come before council and ask for a zoning change to go conservation, I would be more than happy to support that. I think it wouldn't be hard to get council approval on that one, just thought process. So, Councillor Solsi?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure everyone was clear. Like, I worked on this project for the terms of reference in the EA back with Councillor Bazinet and then JP St. Pierre for 4 years when we looked at the terms of reference for that site. And I now presently sit on the Communication Liaison Committee for Taggart Miller. I'm not there as a supporter of what they're doing. I'm there to stay informed and abreast. Charles Armstrong also, you had to apply and you were appointed to that position. So there's a representative from each area, like from Ottawa, and there's about 8 of us, I believe, that are on the committee, and we meet regularly, and it's just to stay informed. And that was something that Michelle Taggart had indicated to the committee. So we were concerned, and I am concerned for the well-being. You know, just as an example, the W.E. Burton is one of the most highly trafficked conservation areas in the whole region that South Nation takes care of. So I could see this being something that would also have high traffic and a lot of use. And it could be for hiking and cross-country skiing. The guides and the scouts could use it for camping. There's just a lot of things that could be, and it's a significantly sensitive area with a lot of endangered species and flora and fauna. So I am totally supportive of this initiative, and I congratulate you on bringing this to council tonight. And you know, I thank you for having the foresight and the vision that this is a very important issue, and we'll fight to keep it.
Thank you.
Safe.
Thank you very much, everyone. You're more than willing to stay for the rest of the meeting if you like. I'm expecting a good percentage of you are out the door, but thank you very much for your presence this evening. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, item 10, consent items. Motion that all items listed under consent items be received as presented. Request from the Community Grant Special Event Program for the Parks and Recreation Department of December 2019. The minutes of the Parks, Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee of September 23rd, 2019. And minutes of the Russell Historical Society of October 7th, 2019. Mover and a seconder, moved by Councilor Councilor Janowski. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. We'll give 3 seconds. Next we go to item 11, reports from departments and council committees. Item A, removal of part lock control, report PD 127, 2019. Any questions, comments, members of council? I'll take the opportunity to make this suggestion now. In regards to removal of part lock control, this is a pretty standard practice, Madame Tremblay. I don't think in the history I've been here that council has ever said no to a part lock control. I think we should do like the Parks and Rec and include those in the consent items moving forward. If council's okay with that, the administration can work out the details. Everybody seems okay with that, Monsieur Le Duc, Madame Tremblay. I know these are very lengthy reports that you have to write that are essentially rubber stamped every meeting. So Madame Tremblay, would you be okay with that? Just having it as part of the consent items?
Yeah, we're going to discuss the process.
Right, but council is open to the idea, so we'll be able to tweak it as. I see we have our usher who is pushing everybody out, so much appreciated, Mr. Baker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm doing Millie's job. Can I get some pay?
Item B, removal of part lock control, report PD 129, 2019. Same thing, questions, comments, members of council? I see none, we'll move on. Item C, refinancing of La Baron loan, report FS 42, 2019. We're just going to reopen the doors because technically it is a public meeting, so we can't have the doors closed. The council receives report FS 42, 2019, dated December 2nd, 2019, adopts a proposed bylaw authorizing the refinancing of Le Baron loan. Questions, comments, members of council? Councilor Janowski.
So, it's my understanding that every household was about 4,000, correct?
Monsieur Godin.
Merci, Monsieur Maire. Bonsoir, Chambre du Conseil. That's correct. So I think it's $4,012.
So we've now moved on to a new process, and for when we finance, and I understand that there is a grandfather clause of some sort here, but we are open, we're not obligated to maintain this really slow payback. Is there any way at all that we can at least go with prime so it's not costing us money?
Monsieur Leduc, Monsieur Godin?
Council Lawrence, so yes, absolutely, I mean, it's up to council, what type of rate we wanna charge for this. Our approach was to keep a consistent approach with the last term. This would be the fourth and final term for the payment of that project. We're proposing 2.5%, but I mean, council for sure could, prime rate today is 3.95%, so if council would like to go to that, we could definitely prepare some new tables to update that.
Councilor Tarnowski?
Thank you very much. My argument for it is that it's below prime, so there's no value in paying it off. You know, so just at least to try to encourage people to pay it off as quickly as possible. And I don't think it's putting anyone in hardship if we put it at prime. It's still lower than any bank rate that's available out there right now. So it's just my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Councilor Tarnowski. This will be part of the items later on. If somebody wants to remove it and make a suggestion at that point in time, we have the option to do so. Any other questions? Councilor Tarnowski?
Can I therefore ask for that to be removed?
Yeah, remove item C from the consent items. Next item, item D, noise amendment, report PIC 33-2019, request Nicolas Malbec of Rossley Tuc Inc. for Le Caribou to be held on January 17, 2020 during the Emblem Winter Carnival 2020. This is pretty standard. Questions, comments, members of council? Quelque chose d'habitude de l'administration, c'est pas mal standard à chaque année. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Item E, four-way stop intersection, report ISPW 18A-2019. The council receives report ISPW 18A-2019 dated December 2nd, 2019. Adopts a resolution as proposed in this report. Monsieur Leduc, Monsieur Bourgon, I know that you've had discussions. There's different options listed in the report. What would be the administration's position in regards to this situation?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, member of council. Like I stated the last meeting, the administration would have kept it at the status quo, like we're currently in that situation right now. But looking at the different options that is being presented tonight, if we are to go towards one option, I would recommend the oversize of the signs. That's probably the cheapest way and the quickest way to address those two intersections. Or if, like Council Laurent mentioned last meeting, to do at least one, but that would be the easiest way. And again, this resolution would have to be sent to the counties to get approved, and to the cost be shared 50-50 with them.
Okay. Councilor Tarnowski, then Conseil Associé.
Merci, Monsieur Bourgon. I would concur with that. I think that's the way to go. I don't see the value in that flashing red light, the cost, especially with the city of Ottawa on the one intersection saying that there's no value. I think when it's a four-way stop, there's four opportunities, so even if someone burns through the stop because they don't see it, chances are the other stop should be, people coming in the other direction should be stopping. So you would have to have two people that miss the stop. So I'm comfortable with going with an oversized stop sign, if we can put that as an amendment.
Thank you very much. Councilor Associé?
So there is a sign still that says a stop is coming up, because I saw that the other day when I was approaching it. So it does indicate. What about, I saw your suggestions for the spring, possible, like the white lines, or you had talked about the grading that makes it bump. Like, what is the cost for that? I didn't see a cost.
Mr. Leduc, Mr. Bourgon, I believe it was you were saying in the operation.
It will be like both options will be operational. I don't have any exact price for the grinding, but if I look at what it costs us for other paving job and we do grind for joints, it would be a few $100 per grinding. Lines would be it would be staff probably from the county doing that type of job. So again, it's minimal, a few $100.
Yeah.
So the cost would be similar to what the signs
So
were.
would we consider doing that along with it, or
I would recommend just to do the signs.
just?
And to give council an idea of the size, it's about 1.5 feet bigger than the current sign that's installed right now. There's a few intersection, if you look at the intersection of Craig and Boundary, I believe those are oversized signs.
Mhm.
And same with Notre Dame and Limoges Road, there's oversized sign at that location as well.
What was the cost for those oversized signs?
It's about $800, and that's include staff time to do installation.
You know, the other, with the lights, I mean, I would have gone with the solar because was the cheapest. And then there's no hydro involved and things like that, but, yeah, I would support the oversized sign.
Conseil Brisson, anything on that? No? Okay, we'll remove this item because I believe we have to make a change to the, adopt the resolution as proposed in this report, so we'll make the change. So we'll remove item E as well. Okay. Item F, OSIM Bridges Inspection Report ISPW 19-2019. That council receives report ISPW 19-2019 dated December 2nd, 2019. Questions, comments, members of council? Anything? Conseiller Brisson?
Je ne sais pas si c'était dans le rapport, je ne l'ai pas trouvé. Juste que comme les numéros de pont ou de calbrette, est-ce qu'on pourrait savoir où ils sont situés? Y a-t-il une place qu'on aurait comme le matching?
Monsieur Bourgon?
Merci, Monsieur le maire. Donc, dans ce que j'ai mis en attachement au rapport, c'est le résumé. Mais chaque pont est bien détaillé, comme il y a, juste vous donner une idée, l'épaisseur des évaluations. Donc, c'est une des raisons que je n'ai pas mis en attachement, mais c'est certainement l'information que je pourrais partager avec les membres du conseil, là, les locations exactes là, de chacune de ces structures.
C'est justement à savoir, c'est le pont Saint-Pierre, le pont...
Essentiellement, peut-être un Excel cheat sheet comme pour les chemins, mais une chose pour les calbrettes, pour les fonds.
Puis si je peux ajouter, dans le fond, c'est des inspections qui a toujours été faites par l'administration. Mais là, vu que nous sommes dans un temps on a fait le road study avec notre asset management, ces choses-là, donc je croyais que c'était important là, de montrer au conseil que l'évaluation de nos structures, telles que les grosses calbrettes et les ponts sont faits, puis on a une idée là, du coût de remplacement de ces choses-là aussi.
Définitivement important quand on regarde les budgets d'année en année. On regarde ça, puis on sait qu'il y a des grosses dépenses qui s'en viennent. Évidemment, asset management has always been a situation where, you know, when you built a bridge 50 years ago, you said, it's good for 50 years. We don't have to put money aside to fix it. Well, if that would have happened, we wouldn't be necessarily in the situation we are today. So, but merci beaucoup pour le rapport. It's very informative. Move on to the next item. Item G, Waste and Recycling Collection Report ISPW 2019. The council receives report ISPW 2019 dated December 2nd, 2019, and approves the proposed bylaw to award a contract and to authorize the entry into an agreement with Waste Management Canada Corporation for the collection of waste and recycling for a period of 7 years for $8,397,630.08 plus $147,798.29, totaling $8,545,420.37. This amount includes 1.76% of non-refundable HST, and that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to sign the agreement, and that council approves the amendment to Schedule A6 of the user fee bylaw. Question, comments, members of council? Councilor Sosi?
Okay, so does this mean that we can't relook at the green organics until 7 years?
Monsieur Leduc, Monsieur Bourgon?
That means that it's not part of the contract. That would be awarded under scenario A. But council at any point in time could take the decision to, one, add to this current contract with the collector, or to simply issue a separate contract to do the collection of the organic. So there's always options for council to move forward at any point in time for the organic collection.
Because, I mean, I was disappointed we weren't gonna be picking up organics, because I just noticed from our survey of the township that was one of the top requests from residents, was to have, organic pickup. And, like other communities are doing, they are doing the bi-weekly garbage because the organics reduces your garbage by a third, and you don't have to smell. And so then the cost goes down because you're not picking up garbage every single week. But that's good to know that we can at least relook at it.
Thank you very much. It's always everybody would like everything, but when they don't know what the costs associated with getting something, well, it's kind of hard to say. As in the survey we'll discuss later, but the costs weren't associated as part of the survey. But we know at this point in time, based on the tender documents that were received, organic, we're looking at approximately $100 per household extra, Monsieur Bourgon?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, that's correct. That's what was presented at budget deliberation. It's about an increase of $100 per unit per resident.
Okay, parfait. Other questions or comments, members of council? Autre chose d'autre à ajouter de l'administration? Okay, move on to the next item. Item H, management review of the DWQMS report ISWAT 02-2019. The council received report ISWAT 02-2019 dated December 2nd, 2019, and acknowledges receipt of the minutes taken at the QMS management review meeting held on November 20th, 2019. Questions, comments, members of council? Anything to add from the administration, Mr. Bourgon?
No, that's only a report that's being brought forward to council annually. So our next step will be our annual report.
Yes. Councilor Associate?
Yeah, I just noticed in the report, what was the extra bag for possible medical garbage?
Can you point out in the
It was
perhaps the
H, it
page?
said extra garbage bag for medical reasons. It was under the management user fee.
Monsieur Leduc, Monsieur Bourgon?
Okay, so we're on the waste.
Oh, we're back in the.
Oh, that's on the waste one?
But to answer Councillor Associate, if a resident provide a doctor's note,
Yeah.
we do allow an extra bag for medical reason for a year. So it had to be renewed annually, but that's something that was approved a few years ago by council.
Sorry, I had it written down as H.
No problem. Okay, we'll move on to item I, report about lead testing in drinking water, report ISWAT 05-2019. The council received report ISWAT 05-2019 dated December 2nd, 2019 about information report on lead testing in drinking water. Monsieur Leduc, Monsieur Bourgon, this is in regards to some news stories that came out a few weeks ago.
Exactly, and also to follow the notice I gave council 2 weeks ago. Our distribution system of drinking water is safe from lead. We did an intense testing in 2012, which includes about 100 different residents plus our system. So at that time, we got the exemption to test only every 3 years. So we're currently in that phase. Our last tests were in July 2018. So in 3 years from that day, we'll do our next testing. We are testing annually for the Kennedy. Sorry if I pronounced that word properly. But basically, so that would be a sign if there's a change. There's a sign that there's potential lead in our system, so that would trigger to do the testing annually. So we are always looking for those type of metal in our drinking water. So I just want to reassure council that our water still it's safe for drinking.
And just as the report indicated, our system is actually still a fairly young system, if you.
Exactly, we don't have any cast iron, all our system is in PVC. So we don't have an old infrastructure like the major cities are seeing right now, or old establishment, because most of those depot of lead comes from the internal plumbing, not necessarily the distribution system.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item J, festival license for special event with alcoholic beverage, report PR 34-2019. The council receives report PR 34-2019 dated December 2nd, 2019, and supports the request of Tic de Brew Brewery Inc. for a public event special occasion permit liquor license for their Caribou Night being held on January 17th, 2019. Questions, comments, members of council? Anything to add from the administration? It's pretty straightforward, comes back every year. Move on. Item K, grass cutting report, grass cutting contract report PER 35/2019. The council receives report PER 35/2019 dated December 2nd, 2019, and approves the proposed bylaw to award the grass cutting tender for municipal parks and properties for the years 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 as an option to Spring Breeze Yard Care Limited for the amount of $5,575.42. This amount includes a 1.76% of non-refundable HST per cut week. Questions, comments, members of council? Conseiller Brisson.
Juste une question, parce qu'il me semblait que dans la dernière réunion ou à l'autre, on avait octroyé un achat d'un zero turn pour couper l'herbe. C'est pour ça, c'est savoir.
Monsieur le Duc, Madame Mitard.
Merci, Monsieur le maire, membre du conseil. Oui, notre zero turn, c'est principalement pour le fun draguer nos terrains de balle. Okay? Puis aussi, on coupe l'herbe de temps en temps quand on a des périodes assez mouillées durant l'été. On fait une deuxième coupe durant la semaine là, sur nos terrains de balle pour que les gens... Parce que notre contracteur le fait seulement pas par semaine. C'est aussi bon d'avoir un tracteur à l'herbe.
D'autres questions complémentaires? Non? Quelque chose d'autre à ajouter de l'administration?
Non, c'est le contracteur qu'on avait déjà. On est satisfait aussi avec le travail qu'il fait, donc on est content de pouvoir octroyer ce deuxième mandat.
Parfait, merci beaucoup. Next item. Oui, conseiller Bisson.
Le long de la piste cyclable, est-ce que c'est seulement le contracteur-là qui le fait aussi?
Il y a une section qu'il peut faire, il y a une section qu'il ne peut pas faire, parce que c'est trop rough, là, en français. Donc, c'est pour ça qu'il faut de l'équipement un peu plus spécial. Cette année, on a eu de la difficulté à avoir l'équipement. On n'a pas pu l'avoir chez la compagnie Holder. Donc, l'année prochaine, on va retravailler ça avec la participation de la voirie qui va nous aider pour ça. Parce que notre équipement à nous est trop gros.
Okay. Merci beaucoup. Move on to the next item. Item L, user fee corrections for ice rental, report PR 36/2019. The council receives report PR 36/2019 dated December 2nd, 2019, and approves the recommendations of the department by adopting the proposed bylaw to amend Schedule A9 Parks and Recreation Fees and the User Fees and Charges Bylaw 2019-160 with respect to the ice rental on school snow days, and that the appropriate adjustments be made to the Russell Municipal Facilities rental and allocation policy to reflect such changes as an ulterior date. Questions, comments, members of council? Conseiller Tarnowski?
Can we put it on the screen? Thank you. Just highlight the text there, please. Or make it bigger as well. Okay, so I have a few questions pertaining to the blurb here. I have no issue with anything, but I just found that as part of our strategic plan, we talked about a service approach, and so I just have a couple of questions. Number 2, the reservation must be made with a responsible employee of the Parks and Recreation prior to arrival. Isn't that the case for every reservation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Usually the reservations are done through booking, and then the person responsible for the ice would call back. But at this point, if they call in at the arena and they're talking to, let's say, the operator, it's not to say that the operator is not a responsible person, but he's not responsible to take reservations. So we really want these people to be talking to the right person. So this is why we make it mandatory that they speak to the right person. We've had some events lately that they're not dealing with the right people, so obviously sometimes the right information gets lost in the process.
Okay. So if I read that, you're telling me that the way it's worded there, it just sounds like the other employees that may not be responsible.
Well, when we say responsible, we mean the responsible person for bookings. So we can add that if it's...
To me, like if we have a process to make reservations, then that reservation should either be doable or not doable. Like I don't know if we need that detail. I have a couple of other points pertaining to it. Number 4, to make a reservation, please allow at least 2-hour window, for example, So again, I think that we're putting conditions that if the reservation can't be made, we just say unfortunately it's not available. I don't know that we need to put in all these extra requirements. It's just not to me, it's not a service approach. If we have a process and we can't make that reservation because there's no employee available, which I think this is the point of, then we should just say that unfortunately it's not available to make a reservation, rather than putting this minimum 2-hour window. Because what if the employee is available and it's a 1-hour window? So it's just, again, it just sounds like it's more negative than it needs to be. Number 5, a person age 18 or over must be present. Isn't that a standard for any reservation for the ice?
Yeah, but we just want, and to do the reservation, to do the contract, they need to be 18 and over.
So wouldn't that be
It's just
standard?
because some people will call that had never reserved the ice before, so they might not be
Okay.
aware of these.
So just with all due respect, I would assume that could happen with any reservation, whether it's on a snow day or not. So it's just, like, if we already have the policies, adding all this is just, almost redundant.
Madame Guitar? Monsieur Leger?
If I can just add, this is a small text to read when you want to make a reservation within an hour. You don't want this person to have to read the whole rental policy. So this is why we made it in a small text. We try to summarize the conditions. Yes, there might be some repetition from a reservation policy, but like the person that wants to rent an hour of ice that has never rented before, they don't want to go through the whole policy. By reading all this little text that will be posted on the website, it's kind of simple.
I just
And-
think, sorry.
And the 2-hour window for us, the way we looked at it, the positive side that we looked at it is if, let's say we have an employee that is working presently in Marionville, he's the operator, it gives him time to come back and allow this person to have his hour of ice. This is how we were looking at it, so,
Yeah.
it's, you know,
So again, based on our strategic plan and our service approach and everything else, I think that we're just putting barriers or demonstrating barriers where they may not need to be. If we can accept the reservation and someone's available to service that client, if they meet the requirements, adding all these like barriers to me is just not very service focused. And that's just my
Monsieur Leger?
opinion.
Monsieur le Maire, Membre du Conseil, bonsoir. I believe the answer is the opposite of your question, Councilor Tarnowski. I think we're putting conditions that will assure the public making the request that we will be agreeing to the request if these conditions are met, not the opposite. Because it seemed to us last time around, you were really wanting us to accept any request. And so this would be the minimal requirements to meet, and if they do, then they're kind of a guarantee that we'll have ice for them.
Exactly. They can look at this and say, oh, I don't meet this criteria, I shouldn't even bother calling. As opposed to where I'm calling and then I'm being told, well, I wasn't aware that this condition is there. If I knew the condition was there, I wouldn't even bother to call in the first place. It's
yeah, it's.
one,
Yeah.
quatre en dessous pour une pièce. Councilor Sosa?
One suggestion I might make for number 2 is just put the reservation is made with the employee responsible for the bookings
Yeah.
instead of the responsible employee.
Yeah.
So then that would solve that.
And just to confirm, this did go in front of the Parks and Rec Committee, right?
It did, we did mention it in the report.
Yeah, and the Parks and Rec Committee thought that it wasn't even worth the while to put this in place, that's correct?
No, they were not in full favor with the,
With the rate.
No,
discount.
of putting this in place, they
Yeah,
they
the
didn't see the
idea.
value of putting
Yeah.
such a program
Yeah.
in place. Conseiller Brisson?
The comment that was just that since it was already costing some money at full price, that's why the committee didn't saw the need of even cutting more the price of it if it's already below. And
Yeah.
Right, because right now, we know that an hour of ice roughly is about $225,
$240.
$240, and we're selling it at $125, so it's already roughly at
Yeah.
50% the cost of actually operating. But then again, we're talking realistically, we're talking about a $38 difference in the hour time. Councilor Tarnowski?
Just want to clarify that my comments have nothing to do about the rate or anything like that, it's just about the wording. One last point was like, subject to availability, isn't it always subject to availability on all the reservations? Anyways, I won't say anything. Leave it as well.
Okay. Parfait. D'autres questions, commentaires? We'll move on to the next item. Item M, community grants. The council receives report PR 37-2019 dated December 2nd, 2019, and approves the following department's recommendations for community grant donations in 2019 to the following groups. 1, to approve an in-kind grant in the amount of $1,156 to Deborah Canada and King Club of Russell for the rental of the Emblem Community Center for the Butterfly Child Holiday Concert on December 12th, 2019. According to the community grants and contribution guidelines, the above request meets our requirements for funding. 2, to refuse an ad hoc grant in the amount of $500 to Limoges Optimist Club for the Christmas tree lighting on December 7th, 2019. Questions, comments? Conseil Brisson and Councillor Saucier.
Yeah, I was just even surprised that that request was refused, just to know what's the reason for it.
Oui, Monsieur le Duc, Madame Picard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Well, the guidelines for the community program is usually to grant a community group to start a program, fund them a free hall to have their program on their fundraising. At this point, they're asking $500 to pay for a rental. This is what we're paying. $500 a rental, and beginning of February, everything's gone. So it's a $3,000 activity for rental of Christmas lights. So for us, we look at the guideline and say, you know what, there's other solutions, other projects, and I think sustainability is also important. It's also part of our community program. And there's no sustainability in this, so does this mean that every year we will have to grant $500 to pay for Christmas lights rental? We do have a project in Russell. They do not ask grants, but they've fundraised the money to pay the lights and volunteers, and like we mentioned in the report, we would be willing if they would buy their lights and maybe help them out to pay the rental of the scissor lift, because this is something that is very expensive to buy, of course. But right now, we're paying rental of lights, a scissor lift, and in February, everything's gone. That's $3,000.
I saw, based on the report, I saw that essentially you could buy 2,600 lights for $455.
That's
so
correct.
You're stating that we could give that donation if there was
To
actual
buy the lights. Yeah.
something that would be
Yeah.
at the end of the
Something that will stay year after year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Conseil Brisson?
Just a comment that they did try to do it by themselves, but it's such a big tree that's why they hire some professional, and with volunteer, with the equipment, that's why, and it's an activity that is bringing the community together with the tree lighting, and it's keep the tree is light up for all the Christmas season. So that's why I think it was an activities that was bounding the community. And yes, it's been a few years that they're doing it, just that they say, okay, we'll see if the municipality is able, and it will be a place for Russell, to our name, that we're doing something too for Russell, for Limoges, participation for them. And I know it was a package that they had from that company, that they were installing the light, taking it out. So that's why it's not really the lights that is costing a lot. It's more the qualified person on that, comme cette label-là, qui est pour le faire. And you know how it is with the insurance and everything. So that's why I was saying $500, it's a real small amount for such an event.
Councilor Saucier, question?
Well, you kind of answered my question, but again, could we not encourage them to purchase the lights instead of renting them?
Well, yeah, we did talk to them last week because we needed some clarification in their grant request. And up to now, they've asked already 2 other townships, and one township and one community group to help pay for that also. They're requesting another $500 from each of those groups, and they haven't had an answer yet. So they don't know yet if they'll have the whole amount of money to pay for this. So this is why I'm saying, if council wishes, I could very well suggest them, like, you know, why don't you buy the lights and just rent the scissor lift? And we could help in that. I would strongly recommend that one.
Councilor Chernowski?
Well, if I just go by what you just said about the danger or the lack of experience for them to actually install those heights and stuff like that, that's the issue more than?
As Madame Guital just said, we're willing to help with the rental and equipment and staff, c'est ça?
Well, not the staff.
Not the staff, man, c'est ça, I just wanna clarify.
The
what you're saying.
rental of the scissor lift.
Yes, but you
Is that-
said and help, so that's why I just wanna clarify exactly what we're talking about.
We're willing to help to pay for the rental of the scissor lift and the Christmas lights, the purchase of the Christmas lights. Because right now, your $500 is gone, in 2 months, it's gone, and next year we'll have to, again, give another $500. For me, it's not sustainable, and, you know, community grant money is still, you know, something that we have to look after, I think.
Okay. Well, this item can be pulled off if council members wish. I'll just clarify one point that Monsieur Conseil Bisson said. You know, I think we've done a lot for the village of Limoges. I think we bought about $15,000 worth of Christmas lights last year. So to make the comment that they're looking for us to participate, Russell Township to participate in Limoges, I think we've proved that on numerous occasions in the last few years. So $15,000 worth of lights last year that are sustainable, that are hanging on our city, on our municipal roads, I think is definitely participation. Question?
Just one last comment. Just that also for this year, I think it's next week it's next week, the event. So that's why they're really tight on time-wise.
December 7th, it's this week.
It's Saturday.
It's Saturday.
But we received the
that
grant
was,
application link.
yeah, but that was my fault too, because I was supposed to bring them I take the blame for this. It was supposed to come at the last council meeting, but we had fill out only by Thursday instead of Wednesday.
Because we received that on November 8th.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying that for this year at least, that they can came with another budget, because that's why there's just a few days left, that they cannot have the time to go and buy the lights. This company arrived and they install it professionally, because.
Well, we know the case. We're pulling the item out of consent items, and we'll deal with it at that point in time. Move on to the next item. Item N, Annual Survey Report CAO 14-2019. The council receives a report CAO 14-2019 dated December 2nd, 2019. Questions, comments, members of council? Councilor Chernowski.
So I think I saw in the emails we got a new version with the graphs.
Yes, we did get, there was notified staff this morning that on our package it's very hard to see, so they sent, I believe, the Word document that allowed us to see a clearer picture of the graphs.
Okay, I looked at that, yeah, unfortunately. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Quelque chose à ajouter, Monsieur le Duc?
Seulement, oui, c'est étonnant, je ne peux pas laisser passer ce survey-là sans faire état de certaines choses qui ont été soulevées dans le survey. Surtout au niveau du nombre de participation. This year, about 425 people responded to the survey compared to last year, which was 376. So a significant increase in the participation. I'm glad to see that the higher number of satisfaction was into the grade A instead of B+, so it's what's quite satisfying for us regarding the way we've delivered service to the community. More people, again, have expressed their intent to recommend moving into our township through this survey. So that, again, that was a very positive statement from respondents. And interesting enough, the majority, over 50% of those who responded to the survey are individuals who've been here less than 5 years or between 15 and 20 years. So the majority are fairly new residents who've been elsewhere and having very positive statements to make about our township was very interesting to receive. And also, there's a high number, about 136 respondents who were returning in their comments. And what's quite interesting that 67% said that they see the improvements since 2016, which is the first year we did our surveys. It was quite interesting to receive that again as a comment. We had many comments on the survey. There was 260 comments received from the surveys. And you've seen in the report the 15 main trends that were out there. This year's staff asked me to, and I agree with that we should probably put some context regarding or some considerations so that the respondents, when they see this report, understand how we responded to some of these trends that are being raised. Some things are being attended to in this year's budget in 2020. Some are part of our strategic plan coming within the next 3 years. Some things have been discussed by council, either have been decided not to proceed or to proceed. So many of the items raised in the main trends needed to have some context and information. That's why I agreed to the request, and staff have reviewed those sections and clearly states where we are regarding those trends. So it was a positive return from staff on that. Again, from the retailing point of view, same suggestions are coming in and again every year. Food and restaurants, more of them, brand names restaurants or brand name stores are part of the retail outlook that people like to see in the community. And so I like to go through the 15, but I'm not going to go through that. Mr. Mayor, you've read the report. But certainly, there's a lot of things in there, and they're quite positive, and I'm really happy that people took the time to respond to it and to the survey. And next year, again, we'll be going back and getting more feedback as to how we're doing and things to improve and things that we're doing well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leduc. Communication is never a bad thing. Councillor Associate and then Councillor Janoski.
Yeah, no, it was a really good report, and I guess it will be on our website for people to see.
Yes, as of tomorrow morning, they will be posted on the website.
And the one that concerned me was when some of the businesses that were saying that they felt like we're supporting new businesses but not existing businesses. So that was one thing that I saw in there that kind of jumped out at me. So I don't know how we can address that, but I think it's important.
Mr. Leduc.
If that's
I
the
think
perception.
in our comments, we did indicate that through the CIPs, through lunch and learns, through business profiles, we do these kind of things that promote these businesses locally that are already existing. And I think some comments these were generalized, and some comments were, why don't we follow up closely with all the businesses who are not taking care of frontages or whatever, so those kinds of things. So we've kind of summarized that through the CIP program, where there's a possibility for us to provide money to improve the looks of these existing businesses. So there's actions taking place there, and we know that it's always a focus of ours to follow up with these companies, and we're inviting them to a lot of lunch and learns, and some of them are coming up and some of them are not. So, but I understand there are smaller businesses and sometimes they're busy. So,
Yeah. Hopefully.
yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Janoski.
Juste un commentaire, si je pourrais vous demander, M. Leduc, au niveau du contexte du survey précédent. Alors, on avait 69 français, 356 anglais, puis 71% femmes comparé à 29% hommes. Est-ce que c'est pas mal dans les mêmes ratios qu'on a eu dans le passé? Ou,
Membre du conseil, en 2018, il y avait eu 376 répondants, donc 48 en français et 328 en anglais. Donc c'est similaire comme ratio de répondants.
et hommes et femmes pour la même chose? Ça devrait.
Il y a eu un peu plus de répondants féminins cette année. L'année passée, 66%, cette année environ 75%, donc un petit peu plus cette année.
D'autres questions? Quelque chose d'autre à ajouter, Monsieur le Duc? No? No? Thank you very much. Very well put together, and it's interesting to see what the trends seem to be and what everybody's looking for as we go forward. We keep them informed and give them a little bit more context, and we'll see where we go from there. Item O, renaming of Emram Recreation Center Ceremony Report CAO 15-2019. The council receives report CAO 15-2019 dated December 2nd, 2019. And the council agrees to proceed with a ceremony at 11 a.m. on Saturday, May 9th, 2019 to rename the Emram Recreation Center building to Centre Communautaire Camille Piché Community Center. And the council agrees to proceed at this time or in the days preceding the ceremony with the installation of lettering on the building and that the plaque be unveiled at the official ceremony. Questions, comments?
That's 2020.
Yeah.
Yes, 2020, excuse me. May 20th. It's written 2019, but it's actually 2020. We don't have time machine. Okay, Monsieur Leduc.
Monsieur le membre du conseil, donc c'est un dossier qui avait été soulevé en début d'année, donc on est content de pouvoir faire avancer. Dans la recommandation, comme on avait souligné, est-ce que le conseil décide qu'on procède immédiatement à l'installation des lettres sur l'édifice ou seulement attendre dans les journées qui précèdent la cérémonie? Donc c'est une question qu'on voulait savoir parce que les lettres sont disponibles pour être installées. Mais est-ce que vous voulez que ce soit, on procède ou non avant? C'est un peu la directive qu'on recherche du conseil.
At this point in time, we're already making reference to the community center as this being the name?
No.
No?
No.
Also, if we do it all at the end, well, it'll be installed a couple of days before the unveiling, whether we do it then or we do it now. For me, there's no difference. Members, council's thoughts?
Juste un commentaire, c'est que comme c'est là, c'est l'hiver. C'est tout le temps plus dur en hiver, tout ça, que rendu au mois de mai. Ça va être nouveau aussi. Fait que je crois pas que la famille soit offensée parce qu'on attend à ce temps-là non plus.
No.
Puis je pense aux employés pour les installer, là, c'est bien plus facile.
Ça sera pas nos
Non,
employés
non, mais
qui les
non,
installent.
non, pas pour nous autres, mais même pour l'installer.
Madame Guittard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It wouldn't be an issue to get the letters installed. In fact, they were about to install them and we stopped them until that we consult with council. The only thing that I would see, if it doesn't become official before May 9th, we have like correspondence and all kinds of things that we need to change, like on the website. So are we gonna be able to change this even though the official naming has not been done?
I believe, Monsieur Leduc, Madame Guittard, I believe the resolution that was passed by council already changed the name. Officially, it's already been, it hasn't been changed?
Memory serves me correct, I think the ceremony was just about to get us to prepare a report to bring back to council, stating how we proceed with this, and that we do go ahead with that, but not declare it officially. So that's why we're asking the question, do we wait till it's official, or again, do we start now?
Personally, I think that it's already been started referenced as that's the hall. I think that we can move ahead with officially on our letterhead, on the advertising and all that stuff. And then once the lettering in the springtime, we go up and just before May. But that's just a thought. Either way, I'm fine with it. Councilor Janowski?
Yeah, I would propose that if we're making it official now, that it's officially called that, we should put the letters up now and then have the official unveil at that time.
The plaque will be unveiled at that point in time anyways. It won't, the letters will be up, but the plaque itself will
That's
only
right.
be at this date in May. Okay,
Juste c'est pour quelle raison ça avait été mis plus tard, comme ça, comme au mois de mai, au lieu de faire ça comme en janvier, février ou...
Monsieur Leduc?
Ben, en janvier, il y a le carnaval, en février, il y a différentes choses. Donc, on s'est dit, ben, tant qu'attendre à l'hiver, on peut attendre plus tard au printemps, prendre des photos à l'extérieur, il n'y a pas de neige, c'est sec, c'est vieux. C'est dans ce contexte-là qu'on choisissait d'attendre. Ça peut être n'importe quelle date, comme le rapport l'a dit, vous avez d'autres options, n'importe quel samedi identifié dans la recommandation, on pourrait aller là.
Il faut mentionner aussi qu'on a contacté la famille pour voir s'il y avait une préférence, puis ils sont corrects à attendre au mois de
Non,
mai.
c'est pour ça, c'était juste une question de curiosité que
Oui.
le mois de mai...
Okay.
Puis, initialement aussi, on cherchait la date de naissance de M. Piché, je crois que c'est le 15 mai. C'est le long congé, c'est le samedi du long congé. Donc, puisque c'est la grande fin de semaine, on ne pouvait pas nécessairement faire ça à ce moment-là. Donc, on a choisi la date la plus près possible, qui était disponible. Donc, c'est pour ça qu'on met. L'intention était de le faire à sa date d'anniversaire, ou ça aurait été intéressant. Mais, compte tenu des circonstances, on a choisi de ne pas le faire à ce moment-là.
Merci. Item P, appointment of municipal representative. Ah, Monsieur le Duc, excuse.
Donc, j'imagine, dans la recommandation, M. le maire, tantôt, il faut qu'on précise qu'on installe immédiatement ou plus tard. Parce que là, les deux sont là dans la
Okay, alors on va se faire, we'll go with the letters right away. And then the plaque will be installed at that ceremony. Everybody's good with that? Okay. Parfait, Monsieur le Duc. Move on to the next item. Item P, appointment of municipal representative on county committee report CAO 16-2019. The council receives report CAO 16-2019 dated December 2nd, 2019, and that council appoints as the municipal representative to the Waste Management Committee. Questions, comments, members of council? Councilor Tarnowski?
So are we being asked to see if it should be Mr. Bourgon or one of us that goes to that?
That's good.
And what's the recommendation from staff?
Monsieur Le Duc?
Before making a recommendation, I've followed up with the counties, with Marc Clermont. I believe from the municipalities that have responded to this point, probably 4 had identified staff members and only 1 had the mayor been named to the committee. So it seems to be more technical and more data driven than political at this point, and the mayors will be subject to discussing that further when it goes to the real committee of the public works. This is a subcommittee, so the regular committee of public works will be discussing this, plus the council table will be discussing that later on afterwards. So it seems to be a data fact-finding target from this committee, so that's why I would recommend having Mr. Bourgon sitting on that committee.
A little bit of history. The mayors of the United Counties are interested in finding a long-term solution to recycling, waste management, all sorts of stuff. There seems to be different ways of approaching it within the municipalities, so they asked that, the mayors asked that the counties create a subcommittee to investigate what options, if we were ever to look at regional, what would be possible. From that aspect, I think that it's more of a technical issue. Like if I was a representative there and they're asking a whole bunch of questions I don't know, I'm just going to come back and ask Monsieur Bourgon anyways. So I think it's worthwhile just sending Monsieur Bourgon as a representative, and he'll be able to relate a lot more to those technical questions than I will. Councilor Sosi?
Is this, meetings, are they in the day or in the evening?
Most likely, I'd say in the daytime.
Yeah, most likely Canada meetings are taking place during the day.
Well, I'd be supportive of appointing Mr. Bourgon as long as he's interested in the appointment.
I think it's if he's accepting of the appointment.
Yes, yes.
Interested or not, I think if council goes that route, Mr. Bourgon is going to the meeting.
That comment is description,
Right,
job description.
And anything else council said, is pretty much under that line.
You have no choice.
Okay, so, Monsieur Le Duc, I think everybody at the table seems to agree that it should be Monsieur Bourgon that is the municipal representative on this subcommittee of Public Works at the county level.
So the clerk will just put Mr. Bourgon's name in the recommendations later on.
Yes, and number O and P can be as separate items as well, so you can change both the 2 resolutions.
Perfect.
Thank you.
O and P separate, okay. Item Q, council remuneration market study results. Presented by consultant, that council receives the council remuneration market study results from the consultant Corn Ferry dated December 2nd, 2019. I believe, Monsieur Le Duc, we're a little bit early as far as time.
They said they'd be here around 7:30.
Okay.
So maybe you want to skip to other subjects.
Yeah,
and
we'll
come
just
back
move on to the
afterwards.
other subject and we'll come back. Item R, amendments to the Accessibility Advisory Committee's term of reference committee recommendation. The council receives recommendation 2019-001 dated November 13, 2019 from the Accessibility Advisory Committee to amend the Accessibility Advisory Committee terms of reference. Questions, comments, members of council?
Just mentioning that, just,
Monsieur le conseiller Brisson?
que c'est juste du order de paperwork, là, de mettre à date Parce que c'était plus M. Godin qui était là, tout ça. Fait que-
Well, I think I'm looking at the proposed changes. In regards to the membership, we had 2 members who have a disability, 2 members appointed with or without a disability. The reason I was there is because we were having problems finding a member with a disability that wanted to enter the group at one point in time. If we want to go back to 3 and 1, that's fine. In regards to the deputy treasurer, I wouldn't make that change because item 4 takes care of the director of finance treasurer or his or her designate. So if ever the deputy treasurer was not available, the way that would be written, nobody else can go in that place. So I think by leaving it this way, Monsieur Godin has the choice of attending or sending somebody in his place. So I think the way it's worded currently, I think is a good way of doing it. Monsieur Godin?
Merci, M. le maire. Donc oui, je suis d'accord avec ce que vous proposez de garder cet terme-là comme client national. Par rapport à l'autre question, je pense que c'est pour se conformer avec la loi par rapport à avoir plus que la moitié des membres qui sont
Avec une disability.
Exactement.
Okay, so if we're okay changing it to 3 and 1 and then leaving item 4 as is, and that's something that, we're just receiving this right now, Madame Camille Laflamme, and you'll bring back a report with the changes at the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, so at this point in time, it's just receiving. Monsieur Leduc?
So maybe we wanna check, I believe last time I looked at the term disability, it was amended under I think the human rights to add seniors. Seniors now fall into that category. So it doesn't mean, because they sometimes have the hard time to walk, need a cane, need assistance to walk. So this is why the term disability has now included the seniors. So I believe we can verify that. And if that's the case, it doesn't need to have somebody with disability to sit on the committee.
It might be a mobility issue.
But I think the act has been changed to include seniors as a disability definition.
Okay, so perhaps we can review that, and when it comes back to council at that point in time, we can further the discussion. Okay? I'm not saying no word. Okay, maybe let's, we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes, or a little bit longer than that, since we started a little bit earlier with the concert. So let's go to, take a break till about 7:30, and hopefully at that time the consultant is back. Thank you. We'll return to item Q, council remuneration market study results, presentation by our consultant. The council receives the council remuneration market study results from the consulting Corn Ferry dated December 2nd, 2019. Monsieur Leduc.
Madame du conseil, bonsoir. Donc j'ai invité Jan Kennedy de Corn Ferry à faire la présentation de la slide qu'on vous a présentée. So Jan will be going through explaining in further the detail the report that was given to you, so she'll really answer your questions. And if there are some for me afterwards, I'll be certainly responding to them afterwards. So, as we are dealing with council remuneration, this is a discussion that has to be in an open session. So this is why this is presented in open session.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Leduc. Good evening, Mrs. Kennedy.
Good evening. Thank you for having me this evening. I've been looking forward to sharing our report with you, and I understand from Mr. Leduc that you have had the report and perhaps have had an opportunity to read through it, but I will take you through it this evening. Just by way of introduction, understanding what compensation trends are, how the market might be changing is an important element for any organization in terms of being able to understand compensation trends and also to inform decision-making around compensation. So as Mr. Leduc indicated, Corn Ferry was retained by the Township of Russell to assess compensation practices associated with council positions to help guide internal decision-making. And the idea increasingly with most organizations is to be able to work with data, current information, to support evidence-based decision-making. And best practice, just in terms of organizations these days, would tend to conduct studies of this nature approximately every 3 to 5 years, which is consistent with the process that the township has followed for the last number of cycles. So in terms of setting the stage with respect to how we conducted the survey, the township identified 34 municipalities which were deemed to be comparable to the township using a variety of different criteria, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But essentially, our role was to conduct a custom survey to support the gathering of market data and to also ask a number of other questions which were of interest to the township. A total of 13 targeted organizations participated in the survey process, and you may feel off the top that that's quite a low participation rate, given that we went to 34 organizations. And generally speaking, what we find these days is that participation rates tend to settle around 30 to 40%. I think there's a tremendous amount of survey fatigue in the marketplace, although we do tend to see quite a lot of cooperation and collaboration across various municipalities. But this is quite typical in terms of response rates. We know that there's a reasonable amount of survey fatigue in the marketplace. And so, as Mr. Leduc indicated, this presentation focuses on sharing with you the relative competitiveness of the township's council positions, and of course that includes both mayor and councillor. Just in terms of spending a bit of time talking about the custom survey peer group on page 3 of the report. Certainly when organizations are getting ready to conduct surveys of this nature, it's important to reflect on where the organization may compete for talent. So understanding where people are recruited from, where people may move on to once they leave the employment of the township is important in terms of the selection criteria. But a number of other criteria were used, and I understand were shared with you at the outset of this survey, looking at various elements including population, typical salaries and wages, payroll cost per resident, average household income, a number of other criteria which, taken together, give an indication of the organization's ability to pay. And so I think that's important in terms of rounding it out. Again, at first viewing, you might feel that some of these municipalities are sufficiently far away from the township in terms of geography that they may not be relevant. But when you use this filter of these other ways of looking at selection criteria, these are very valid and, as I mentioned, indicate or provide an indicator of the organization's ability to pay. The 13 organizations that submitted data for us to analyze are listed there for you. So it turned out to be just under about 38-39% participation rate, so quite consistent, as I say, with trends that we see today. Moving on to page 4. In terms of surveys of this nature, and particularly where we have perhaps a bit more diversity in the types of jobs that we might be surveying for, this process works largely on a job match basis. And so when we're sending out survey packages to municipalities who've agreed to participate, we're providing them with job summaries of the benchmark positions. And so in this case, we would have indicated job descriptions for both the role of mayor and for the role of councillor to allow the targeted organizations to react and to reflect on how similar or dissimilar these are relative to their own organizations. As you can see from page 4, in terms of the 13 organizations that were participating in this process, each of them indicated that the job summaries were quite compatible with the way they might describe and summarize duties and responsibilities for both the mayor and the councillor. So with that in mind, we can turn a few pages to slide number 7, which really highlights the survey results. And again, you know, this is relatively small. We're looking at 2 particular positions. And so let's just walk through this table from left to right. As we start over on the left-hand side of the screen, we have the 2 benchmark positions that have been identified. We have the current Township of Russell annual salary for each of those positions. And then what you will see in the next number of columns are a series of salary values that relate to particular positions in the marketplace. And I'll just draw your attention to, I guess, the far right as a starting spot where we have the average. So based on all of the data that we would have received, we would have been able to calculate the arithmetic average for both the mayor and councillor position. And then we are able to take a look at the spectrum of the data, the values that are coming in from the survey, to try to understand which organizations are tending to be more assertive payers, leading the market, as well as those organizations that are perhaps not as assertive in their approach to compensation. And the easiest way to think in terms of P90, P75, P60, these are percentiles of the range of data that we would have received. So to keep it fairly straightforward, if we were to have 100 observations in a survey analysis, the 60th observation in terms of magnitude would represent the 60th percentile. And so what this means when we're looking at compensation data, P50 is the median of the marketplace. So again, using the example of 100 observations, the 50th observation would represent the median, the 50th percentile. 50% are higher, 50% are lower. So when we're thinking about this concept relative to compensation, we know that the 50th percentile tends, on average, to be close to the average, all things being equal. The 60th and 75th and 90th percentile are really indicators of organizations who are more assertive payers in the marketplace, and that can happen for a number of reasons. They might have a very assertive compensation philosophy. They might find that given the size of the organization, it's very important for them to be more assertive payers in order to attract and particularly retain their talent. So there are a number of reasons why organizations might choose to be more assertive payers in the marketplace. And for the Township of Russell, the compensation philosophy that's been adopted in more recent years is to look at compensation in the marketplace relative to the 60th percentile. And again, there are a variety of very valid reasons why this may be the case. And one of them is certainly the ability to attract, but mostly to retain. And we see this quite frequently in the public sector, particularly with separate employers or agencies that are smaller in nature and may not have the same kinds of opportunities, let's use Ottawa as an example, as the federal government can provide in terms of career development and career pathing. And so this is quite a common type of strategy with smaller organizations. So what does this mean then relative to the role of mayor and relative to the role of councillor? If we're looking at P60, and again, that's a relevant value to be looking at based on the township's compensation philosophy, what we see is that the township's position of mayor is compensated about 10% less than the practice within this particular survey sample. And so we can look at this and think about this survey sample as being representative of a market of comparison. The role of councillor is compensated closer to 7% above the market of comparison. So what does this mean when we're looking at variations or deviations of this magnitude? What does it mean to be 10% below market, and how important is that in terms of informing your compensation decision making? Generally speaking, what we find is if there are gaps relative to market of a magnitude of 10% or more, this really starts to erode the organization's ability to attract and retain talent, whether this is elected talent or whether it's non-elected officials. And so that's something of a gap to be aware of, and what the implications might be relative to attracting individuals to public service, as an example. When we're looking at market data, we tend to also work within a tolerance of plus or minus 5% as being within tolerance. So we wouldn't necessarily tend to get terribly excited if the values relative to market were plus or minus 5%. And so why 5%? It's a convention that our firm uses, many other firms would use as well, and it really tries to accommodate the idea that the job matching process may not be identical. And so if a job is somewhat larger or smaller, we might have variations relative to how jobs are being paid. There may be, as I mentioned earlier, different styles of compensation philosophy that are originating in the organizations that are participating in the survey exercise. And there may also be differences in the timings of salary increases. Generally speaking, we know that the data that we have pulled in is quite consistent relative to the annualized values and the year in which the data are effective at. But there might be slight differences, nuances around the timing of some of these salary increases, and that can also reflect and play a role in this plus or minus 5% tolerance. So generally speaking, if we were to make any recommendations here, it would be to consider attending to addressing the compensation gap, firstly, for the role of mayor, given that the gap that we've identified is representative of a greater risk. The role of councillor looks to be well-placed and probably allows the township the ability to attract individuals to public service in a way that is relatively healthy. Any questions at this stage? I'll just pause there for a moment.
Councillor Tomasky?
So I've got a few questions.
Yes.
So in doing this type of study, we look, this is based on physical locations, based on size and the same number of residents or ballpark in that. Is there any, an appetite or are there any of these municipalities that look at it more from an economic impact? So for example, you know, we have an area that has 20,000 residents versus someone that has 15,000 residents, but based on, you know, this doesn't take into account the economic impact of that municipality and so on. So is that something that's measured here, or do any municipalities do that where they measure economic impact?
I don't think in the way that you're suggesting, Councillor. I do think, though, that there are some sort of tertiary kinds of elements that could come into play. To the extent that we are looking at a municipality that is undergoing considerable growth, and so from that perspective, one might look at economic impact through the lens of contributing, you know, growth to the greater geographic area. If there is significant growth in the municipality, it might indicate over time the organization's increased ability to pay and perhaps adopt a more assertive compensation philosophy. It might also, in some situations, suggest some measure of urgency around ensuring reasonably competitive salaries because of the fact that with growth, typically are requirements for staffing and hiring. And so from that perspective, it may be important. But I don't think that many municipalities would look at the lens strictly through economic impact.
I've got a couple more questions. In your comparison as well, in comparing the job descriptions per se, they seem to line up. But was there any kind of time put in to analyze whether, you know, the time requirements for those positions, whether, and I'm really thinking more about the mayor here, like whether they were full-time positions or left, you know, part-time or whatnot?
We did ask some of those questions. We have a series of supplemental questions which I'll move on to next.
Okay, excellent.
But I think in some respects, while we have a measure of whether or not the role of mayor might be considered full-time or part-time, I think that given the nature of the role and the scope of responsibilities, there is undoubtedly discretionary effort and discretionary time that goes hand in hand with a role of that nature. And I would suggest the same may be true for councillors. So we didn't examine the actual hours that individuals in each of these roles actually dedicate to the role.
Okay, one last question.
Yep.
In terms of the survey itself, and I don't recall reading this, but in terms of how municipalities adjust their rates of pay other than going through a study like this, Was there any, or did you discover if many municipalities raise based, like follow inflationary rates in terms?
Yes, that would be a very strong indicator. And so generally speaking, there are a number of different practices that municipalities would adopt. One is, if there is a sense that by and large compensation practices are competitive and that the administration is successful in its attraction and retention efforts, then that would typically signal the opportunity to adjust salary scales, salary levels, by some measure of a cost of living index. And our firm, as well as other firms, would provide data on an annual basis, drawn, in our case, from some 500 or so organizations from across Canada in different sectors, giving us a sense of what the predicted annual increase to the salary scale might be. We'll also track on an annual basis what the overall spend plan might be, which might be, typically it's a larger percentage, but it accommodates not only how the organization might choose to raise the structure in and of itself, but also the additional accommodation of correction or performance-based pay or whatever the case.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Conseil Glissant?
Yeah. It's a question also for our CEO. When was the last time we did this? Was it 4 years ago? I know it was, I think at the beginning of the last
Monsieur Leduc?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I think we did that in the second year of the last term. So with the policy, we're now doing this on the first, stay on the first year of the council term, and then making recommendations for the second year of council's term.
So approximately 3 years.
It's close to 3.5 years.
And comparing to the other survey, I know that it's always with requests and everything. You know, if the numbers were quite the same for the number of municipalities that this response and.
Yes, in fact, that's a very interesting question. The response rate was quite similar. We had, I believe, if memory serves, I believe we had 12 or 13 respondents at that time. But I don't think we went out to as many as 34. 32.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, because I do remember that the last time they were saying that the mayor was a bit higher and the council a bit lower. And then here, so it might depend also what municipality did
Yes.
response.
Absolutely, it
So there's always a
would.
bit of.
Yes, and so what's important to reflect on here is that while we have gone to a number of similar municipalities as we did 4 years ago, the full complement is a little bit different. And so we're integrating slightly different practices around compensation for the role of mayor and councillor.
I think one other criteria that might be affecting it is that as a council, we decided to adjust our salaries when the 1/3 taxation was eliminated. We used to get 1/3 tax-free.
Mhm.
So maybe in this case, there are some municipalities that didn't do the same move that we did, and they're affected the numbers as well. Monsieur Leduc?
In this survey, we went to a little bit bigger organizations, because last time, one of the criticism from staff and also from council members were that maybe some of the respondents were smaller, much smaller in size, and maybe not depicting the right picture as to what's paid for this kind of organization, which is expanding near a city or whatever like that, like we are in Russell. So this time when we went back to council, we changed our criteria a bit so that we increased our range of population and revenues compared to the last study.
Councillor Kanowski?
Just a context question. So in the past, the target was the P60. Was that something the council decided?
Monsieur Leduc?
The P60 only comes from the 218 policy that we established afterwards. But I think we were looking at that P60 at the same time too. In that previous study, we went to the P60 point. We confirmed that position by adopting our policy in 218.
And just another clarification, so that P60, if I understand correctly, was based on the fact that a portion of the salary was tax-free at the time?
The reason, Monsieur Leduc?
At the time, most of the comparators were doing the same thing as we were, so that 1/3 was not there in the previous time.
Okay.
Yes. And again, to be more specific to the policy says we aim to be at P60. So meaning the plus or minus 5% sometimes can play here. So that's kind of leeway council has in regards to the policy.
Other questions? No?
Very good, thank you, thank you. There's a section in the presentation that speaks to a number of supplemental compensation practices. This is a variety of questions that were of interest to the township, and we'll walk through here. It's really just prevalence. The respondents have just simply indicated, in many cases, yes or no, or a particular response to a very straightforward question. So the first question speaks to whether or not council members in this survey sample tend to be elected by individual ward or at large. And so what we can see from the response is that an overwhelming majority of these organizations tend to elect councillors or by individual ward rather than at large. We also wanted to understand more as to whether or not mayors in these particular municipalities were looked at as a full-time or a part-time position. Again, the majority of respondents indicated that the role of mayor is seen as a part-time position. There were a couple of questions that we asked relative to the eligibility to certain kinds of benefits programs. Question number 3 was, are council members eligible to participate in a pension plan or group RSP? And again, there's a little bit more of a split here, but the majority of these organizations, 8 of the 13, indicated that council members are not eligible to participate in a pension plan or group RSP. And similarly, when we look at the coverage relative to group benefits, just over 50%, 54% of respondents indicate that council members are indeed eligible to participate in group benefit provisions. Question 5 of the supplemental compensation practices was a question that related to what is the remuneration for council members for attending council meetings? 92% indicated that the meeting fees or the per diems were included in the annual values that we shared with you a few slides back. We also asked whether or not additional remuneration for council members was provided to participate in committee meetings. And again, a bit of a shift there, or a split there. 54% indicate yes. And in terms of the remuneration per meeting, it ranges typically between $50 and $150 for additional or ad hoc committee meetings. We also asked whether council remuneration is subject to annual or cost of living adjustments, similar to the question that we were just speaking of moments ago. In this case, the majority, we've got actually our percentages switched there. The majority of organizations, 85%, indicate that they do not provide annual cost of living adjustments for elected officials. So probably are provided on more of an ad hoc basis, and presumably that would, for the most part, in terms of best practice, that would be informed by a study of this nature. Moving on to the last page of the survey results. Are council members penalized for missing council and or committee meetings? In the majority of cases, council members are not penalized. There were 2 municipalities that indicated that they do have a policy that provides for consequences, as it were, in terms of missing council or committee meetings. In one case, the removal from council after 3 consecutive missed meetings was the policy that's been implemented in one municipality, and penalization following several months of missed meetings, although it wasn't more, the response was not more specific than that.
For clarification, the law states that.
Yes, indeed.
3 months.
Yes,
missed.
indeed.
So I doubt that this removal from council after 3 consecutive missed meetings, I don't think is legally binding.
Binding,
by
given
any
the
means.
regulation. Yes, yeah, no, good point, good point. Moving back to benefits coverage just for a moment, we asked the question, what's the maximum allowable vision care coverage per 24 months? You can see on average, what the provision is, $344 per 24 months. And the value, again, using this concept of percentile values, is 375. So considerably higher than the average value. And then in terms of travel reimbursement practices for automobile expenses, the average reimbursement rate provided is 55 cents per kilometer, with the rate typically decreasing after 5,000 kilometers. So you can well imagine that in geographies where council members are required to travel a considerable amount, that this would be a more pertinent element in the overall reimbursement of expenses, but perhaps not quite as much in this particular township. Any questions relative to these supplemental questions?
No, not at this time.
And then just in terms of wrapping up, we've included the job capsules, the summary job descriptions that we use for the role of mayor and for the role of councillor, just in terms of closing the loop relative to understanding how it was that these survey participants matched their own understanding of their respective jobs to the way in which they were described for the township.
Thank you. D'autres questions dans le conseil? Monsieur Leduc, quelque chose à ajouter? What are you looking for this evening?
Well, conseil, well, I'm looking for certainly a direction regarding something, a recommendation for next meeting. As you know, in our 219 and in our 220 budget, there were $15,000 set aside for the mayor's salary adjustment. So I'm looking for a direction regarding what to do, either to do nothing or to do the full adjustment to $15,000 or any other combination council feels like it should be considering to adjust the mayor's salary. So I'm looking for a direction about that.
Councillor Janowski?
So I think that's a good discussion to have. I would also like to see maybe for the next meeting, like as a presentation, something around penalties for missed meetings. I know that I campaigned on putting some sort of process in play. I'm not sure exactly what that would look like or how that would be, but and I know that we don't have an issue here, certainly, but I'm talking about something for repeated missed meetings, if we can have something. The other thing that I'm still not sure of is, if we go based on residents or households, I feel that it only looks at really one portion of the size and how busy our township is. And so I would be interested in seeing if we can somehow change our calculation and look at it, I don't know whether it was some sort of economic impact or a tax base, where we can take the commercial side of it as well, industrial side of it as well. So as our community grows, it's not just about the residents. Obviously, it's important. It's part of the residents, but it's also to include all those other aspects. I know certainly we do a lot in terms of economic development and working towards that. So is there a way to include that in the calculation somehow? Certainly to set a base amount. So I would like to see that somehow included. And the other thing that I see as two separate items that I want to make sure that we capture in this discussion as we move forward is that obviously it seems that the inflation increase is a standard. If 85% of respondents said that seems to be a practice. But the actual rate itself, to visit that rate as we're doing right now, if that's the process that to do it every 4 years. I thought that council had gone with the 60 percentile as the kind of benchmark. And what would be kind of, what would be the right thing to do here? Should we all kind of say, hey, let's go down to the 60 percentile because we're at 67? I'd like to kind of discuss that a little bit more. And I know Mr. Leduc talked about, or I believe maybe you did, about the plus minus 5 points on that 60. So we're close to that, but maybe we're above that to the 67 percentile because of this inflation process. I'm not sure. I certainly want to make sure that it's fair as much as possible. And I certainly I would also like to discuss the mayor's compensation, which is clearly below what it should be, so I'm not sure that, if we can kind of look in on that as well, so. Not helping at all, I know. Just adding more questions.
Yeah.
Councillor Associate?
Yeah, and the other thing I think we had discussed was whether our mayor was full or part-time, right? We had a bit of discussion on that, whether the position should be full-time or part-time, even though the survey said most were part-time, but we had the discussion for our township. So I'd like to sort of revisit that thing. And then, and that we're all present maybe for the discussion.
For what comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, Brisson?
One thing I would suggest too, if we discuss of full-time compared to part-time, what does it involve too? Because technically the salary is if it's the same, what other implication that we might not be aware of, that they know, because why are they stating that it's part-time compared to full-time?
I think I'll just have a comment again. I think it's very difficult in the sense that municipal council are not considered employees. We do not fall under the Employment Standards Act. So, I think when they say that the mayor is full-time or part-time, it's very based on that individual person doing that job. How you quantify that as a job requirement, I mean, the requirement of the job is essentially what's laid out in the Municipal Act. That's the job description. It's not more or less, that's what the law entails. So it's very difficult from that point of view to say it's full-time or it's part-time. It's every individual is different. Just looking at the towns that are included, I'm not sure, like they might meet. I think that the job requirements would be slightly different. If you have two municipalities who are 15 in population, and one's in full growth mode and the other one is declining, do they have the same job requirements? Right? Like I look at the town of Hawkesbury, for example. Well, Hawkesbury's been declining in the last few years. So there's so many different aspects to look at, and there's no set way. I remember reading an AMCTO report a few years ago where, essentially councils have a tendency to compare themselves to each other, and nobody wants to give each other a raise, so everybody stays low. But again, the discussion of is full-time or is it part-time, that's up to every individual member of council, whether they do that job full-time or part-time.
But again, can I add?
Yeah.
Again, if the mayor is doing full-time work in
Right.
hours, he should be compensated. Not, he shouldn't be getting the same salary that someone's doing half of that amount of time,
And I think that's up to councils as they move forward, right? If you have a mayor that's doing a full-time job, for example, and you say you pay him accordingly, and then the next mayor comes up and shows up to 2 council meetings a month and is never around, well, the council at that day has the right to say, look, you're not performing the job to the level we're expecting of you, so we're going to bring down your salary.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality of councils and the ability to fluctuate the salaries they wish in those. Councillor Tarnowski.
So in talking about that, can we somehow put it in writing that the compensation, if we agree to go in that direction, that the compensation for the mayor is under the assumption that the mayor, I think that's kind of what we were talking about, is that the mayor is, I don't want to say here from 8 to 4 every day, that's not what I mean, but so that it's put into that resolution that kind of entails the fact that the mayor has to be really involved. And that way, in the next council, for example, if the mayor is not involved, then it's pretty obvious that should be revisited. I don't know, is that possible?
I'm not sure. Monsieur Leduc.
I think if you leave it the way you said it, under the assumptions of, then council knows what assumptions were when establishing the new salary. And if any of the assumptions are not being met by a future mayor, then, or the current mayor, then council always has the opportunity to revisit whatever decision they made. So that could be something, if it's written that way, I mean, it's a clear understanding of what's to do for the job to get this kind of remuneration. So that would be possible. But again, I would need the assistance of the mayor and council to draft this, because at one point in time, it's gonna be my perception, but certainly the mayor and council had an idea as to what to do. This might not be done in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's important, as you say, to put it, if you do that and you put it down on paper, you're setting the expectation for future councils. This is what's expected of you. But, conseil Brisson?
Yeah, that's why I was asking to make sure that we have the difference of requirement, whether it's full-time or part-time. If it's full-time, do we have to have in the job description that they have to be at his office from like so many
Yeah, but
hours?
we can't do it that.
No, but that's why I'm asking if it's some requirement that we have to, or part-time. What's the difference that on paper or anything else that would make involved in it?
It's a difficult question. As I mentioned, it's in law, we're not under the Employee Standards Act, so setting, it's up to every council to determine.
But what involvement does it make difference whenever you put whether a part-time or a full-time?
But there's no, at this point in time, there is no time associated to the position. There is, it's not a part-time or a full-time position, it's just a position.
Yeah.
Councillor Bernowski.
Would we be able to know, so there were 2 respondents that, where they qualified the mayors as full-time? How, would we be able to get a better sense of salary for those particular respondents, to get a better feel for it, as opposed to putting the whole average?
I think that we would be able to comment on proximity to either P60 or the average.
Okay.
We wouldn't be able to
No,
disclose,
that'd
but
be
we'd
good,
be able
yeah.
to speak in terms of proximity to either of those anchors.
And I think if I may add on to that, so maybe moving down the road, that if we decide to say that we want a full-time mayor and it's P80, for example, then we say that, as a benchmark for ourselves, that we leave, a full-time mayor as a P80, and if the following mayor decides to be a part-time mayor, goes to P60. You know what I mean? So we can have something that's not based on a preference that we have or not have, where it's something that's fair. So for example, in reviewing ours, and we sit at P67 right now, and if we agree that P60 to 60, or 55 to 65 is where we should be, then I'm comfortable in saying that we should kind of either claw back or not give ourselves the inflation one next year or something like that.
Yeah.
Councillor Associate and then Councillor Brisson.
Yeah, because you could get a mayor, going for the position, and he does have another job,
That's right.
And so he can't commit full-time, to this position, so, yeah, I like that idea.
Conseil Brisson.
The only thing I wanted to warn with saying, okay, we don't allow any like growth, like what's the term, the cost of living, because we're a bit higher for council, but it's just to remember that 2 years ago, the survey that came to us was just the opposite, was that the mayor was a bit higher and councillor was a bit lower.
That's right.
So that's why I'm saying, don't, and what we did, it was just that we didn't lower the mayor's salary at that time. We just left it the same, so justifying that it was, and then continuing with the same advantage as the councillor. So that's a bit what I was thinking, that right now, that it shows here that, okay, as councillors, we can continue as this, not offering ourselves kind of hike, and the mayor is justified to have, but not, like even if we're at 6%, that is a bit bigger, that we're in that range, that we're not completely off
Right.
on it.
Monsieur Leduc?
Council, obviously surveys don't tell us everything and don't provide answers to everything. And additional to the survey, obviously we are working into a region which is called Prescott-Russell. And I have to be fair to the mayor and to council and to the residents. My review of the existing salaries being paid to mayors in Prescott-Russell, so meaning there is one bigger township or city, and then there's 6 others that are smaller. And our mayor right now sits the second lowest paid mayor in Prescott-Russell. And this is why at one point council had decided to put money away for the mayor's salary. So I'm just saying, I don't think you can base your decision only and strictly on this compensation for this question. And I know you're talking about full-time, part-time, all these things, but also the factor that the mayor is second lowest paid in Prescott-Russell when there's 6 others that are much smaller organizations, to me, has to be looked at also. So in my report to council, that information will be provided, or I have it now if council would like to entertain that, but I do have that slide deck available for council to review, to give you an idea as to what's out there right now. But I think that's fair to the survey and fair to the mayor's position and fair to the administration's position regarding the budget as to what to do with this situation.
Councillor Janowski?
Can we just put it up?
Qui est la slide? Est-ce qu'on a la slide?
Councillor Dixon?
Just one question for but just note for tonight, is it our mandate tonight to decide how much we're adjusting the remuneration? Is that what
It's council's decision.
That's why I'm asking if you're looking for that answer tonight, or if it's that report and it's coming back later on. I'm ready. I'm good to have some discussion right away. I'm just to be clear, if we will be talking with some suggestion of money now, or if it will be another report.
Well, I think Monsieur Leduc is looking for a direction no matter what. But Monsieur Leduc?
Yeah, I'm looking for direction. I've noted a few good points council raised about some questions. Can the L be answered by the next meeting for the decision? I don't know. Probably not. But certainly I can have all information in front of council for discussion. For next meeting, for sure, with your direction. So if we look at this slide, you will see every township indicated here. And you will see how the salary breakdown for the 2019 year. There's been only a few confirmations regarding 2020 remuneration, and many more are still being discussed at this present time. So this just provides evidence that where the mayor's salary is currently and councilors are currently being paid in this area. So I thought it was necessary for me to share that with council, so that when you give direction, you have more information in front of you. The latest change has been to the Prescott-Russell remuneration, but that's just recent from last week. I've also I know that cost per resident, our population, our census. I've got some data and maybe some other information maybe council wants to entertain regarding options and where we're at right now regarding past ratio per resident. I have that slide too if council is interested in me showing it to you, which will be part of our report next week.
Members of council?
Just that we didn't have the chance to see all those numbers. And that's why I'm wondering, should we receive those information to discuss it, because that way, it's just that I didn't have the time to take all of
Yep.
them. And I think it will be a decision maybe fast, a bit fast, but for the number.
I think we're making a decision.
Là, il a demandé tout à l'heure que ça se trouvait qu'il y avait un montant. C'est pour ça que j'ai demandé la question, si on voulait un montant comme c'est là.
It's always a difficult decision to discuss salaries of members of council.
Oui, je sais, ça, j'ai pas de problème du tout. C'était juste savoir, comme justement, si on faisait tout de suite ou plus tard. Mais là, vu qu'on a d'autres chiffres, c'est pour ça que je demanderais si on pouvait avoir le rapport avec ces chiffres-là, puis avec les chiffres qu'on a ici, pour ramener une résolution pour à quoi qu'on veut, qu'on recommande le montant, que pour ce soir qu'on a ce rapport-là, puis moi j'aurais. Parce que je pense qu'on s'entend tous que je prends mon option que j'ai pas de problème d'augmenter le salaire du maire dedans. À quel montant, tout ça, c'est tout ça que je voudrais étudier un peu avec les chiffres des deux côtés. Donc, c'est pour ça que avant qu'on lance de chiffres,
Councillor Kanowski?
So I'm in agreement with Councillor Belizeau in the sense that just so we can have this information and maybe the per resident amount, Mr. Leduc, that you had. I still think that looking at it from the whole economic impact, that maybe once we set a barometer, that we can look at it in different ways, you know, on a per resident, you know, when you're comparing those. I just want to be sure that, you know, I really like standards, and so if we all agree to a standard at that 60 percentile, then, you know, that seems to be somewhat reasonable. You know, whatever it is that we come up with, whatever your recommendation you make, I certainly it's obvious to me that the mayor is not paid enough. I have no problem with that. And I'm happy to support a fair raise for the mayor. I just would like to make sure that we follow some sort of standard that we can always go back to. It seems easier, that way we remove, you know, preferences and so on. So whatever that is, if we can somehow get some sort of standard to work with, that'd be great.
Councillor Belizeau?
sur mon point de vue personnel, de dire le standard, c'est juste ça peut varier tellement, comme je faisais remarquer qu'à l'autre résultat, il y a 3 ans, que c'était juste le contraire qui était la situation. Fait que de dire qu'on s'en va tout le temps, comme régulier à dire à 60%, ça dépend de temps d'économie. Fait que j'aurais pas de problème de dire, ah, OK, ben, on va à 60% comme bon range, mais j'aurais pas de problème des fois aller à 70, dépendant de choses. C'est pour ça que c'est dur de dire automatique, une manière de dire, OK, c'est à ce montant-là. C'est pour ça que j'aimerais avoir les chiffres. C'est 2 informations différentes, puis que juste pour avoir le temps d'en discuter, pas d'en discuter, mais d'y repenser et tout ça. C'est pour ça que ce soir, je crois que le rapport, c'était excellent. Je remercie beaucoup. Que c'est voir aussi avec nos augmentations qu'on mettait justement avec le coût de la vie, qu'on a vu, qu'on est venu à bout de garder, que c'est pas dire oups, parce qu'ils disent tout le temps c'est dur à en discuter, de s'allouer un propre salaire ou quoi que ce soit. Et là, c'est un peu un check-in, dire OK, en faisant ça, ça l'a emmené proche de la tendance qu'on voulait de suivre les autres. Puis que c'est une bonne activité.
Councillor Szymanski?
So I'll disagree with you, Mr. Conseil, so a little bit in the sense that we're going to look at more numbers and then we're going to come up with something. But without an actual process, I feel it could lead to possible bias, good or bad. And so, you know, we're at P67 right now, if I understand correctly, for the councillors. And so I would say that you know, as a councillor here, where I put in the work that I put in, and I have a full-time job as well, and so on, and I'm at P67, I have no issue if the mayor is on as involved as I am on a part-time basis, to have him at a P65 or 60 in the range of that. But if the mayor is gonna be here on a full-time basis, then I would want something that's more in line with higher than that P60. And again, I have no issue for us cutting back the councillor, and I agree that we want that ballpark, conseil Grisel, and I think that we talked about that ballpark, ±5. We're at 67, so we're just a little bit over that, and I'm okay with that. I'm not gonna complain about that, but I have no issue in bringing that back in line. And if that means that every 3 years or whenever we do the study, we review and readjust to make sure that we're within that ballpark, that's good. But what I wanna make sure that we capture is that if we're at P67 as councillors doing this somewhat part-time, then if we have a mayor that's fully involved, fully engaged here every day, in his office every day and so on, that I think that we should have the P67 that we have plus in the sense that it reflects the nature of the position being there. So I would really be comfortable seeing that as it relates to your study, to make sure. So if those two respondents that had full-time mayors range in the P80, whatever that may be, then maybe that's what we should be looking at. And then I would be comfortable in voting with that kind of knowledge.
Thank you very much, Councillor Janowski. The only addition I would add is, in your report, Monsieur Leduc, when we're gonna see these numbers, I'd be interesting to see how these positions fare on the grid. Are they P50, P60, P70, P80, for our neighboring municipalities of Prescott Russell, to see where everybody sits. So that's just essentially just ajouter une colonne pour dire where are they falling in that range. Other comments? Monsieur Leduc, does that give you a good...
A good headache, yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I was looking for maybe something a little clearer, but certainly there's all kinds of issues raised. I can't promise I'm going to have all the answers for the next meeting. Presumably some recommendations, some considerations for council to debate further with a more complete report. So I'll try to find more data and provide it with you for the next meeting.
Everybody's good with that?
Yep.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leduc. Okay, next item would be reports from an investigator or the ombudsman. We have none. Notice of motions, we have none. Question period on the meeting of the day. If anyone has any questions, please go up to the lectern and state your name, address for the record, and ask your question.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Charles Armstrong, by Council Neighborhood. I have a couple of questions. One thing, all on the last item, council compensation. The one thing wasn't clear to me. The compensation in the table from the report, was that total compensation or just the salaries alone?
It's total compensation.
That's total compensation, benefits, et cetera.
No, it is cash compensation.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay.
Great question.
Do we know what the value of the non-salary compensation is?
No, we don't.
Okay.
We would have some ability to estimate based on normative data around a reasonably typical slate of benefits and how they might be valued.
Okay. My final question, is there a comparison compensation for council members with respect to the actual budgets of these municipalities? So it sort of falls on the economic value. That usually leads to what the budget is. But I can see in some rural municipalities, for example, where there is fewer people on water and sewer, because we've had that issue, and drinking water came up in this one. In those cases, those municipalities may have as much smaller revenue, because water and sewer revenues have a great impact here, and as a great complication, it makes the job much more challenging for a council member, because you have to worry about all of these other regulations about water and sewer measures, compared to us, or compared to the city of Port Colborne, which is totally an urbanized city, and compared even to the township of Russell, it's just a dot on a map. You know, so those are some of the things that I worry about in terms of the total revenue of the municipality.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Monsieur Leduc?
So I'm just gonna say, I think from this question would necessitate me to send you back the report that I had prepared, which showed you exactly the levels of budget, the levels of capacity of these municipalities, and probably compare more than you think that from the question.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further questions, we'll move on to item 15, resolutions. Motion that council approve all recommendations listed on the agenda under item number 11, reports from departments and council committees. Need a mover and seconder, put it on the floor.
Sorry, I apologize. Just a quick question. So item Q, there was, we just gave direction, and that's,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so the item Q, the wording was that council receives the council remuneration market study results from the consultant Corn Ferry dated December 2nd, 2019. Do you need anything added to that, Mr. Leduc?
From an unclear direction, no, I don't need it. I think I'll bring a report back to council, that's all.
Okay. All right. So we'll need a mover and a seconder put on the floor, moved by Councillor Brisson, seconded by Councillor Chinaski. And now an amendment to the items being removed, Madame Camille Lafemme?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, so I've noted, except C, E, L, M, O, and P.
Okay. Merci, Madame Camille Lafemme. So I need a mover and a seconder to remove these items from the consent items. Conseil Brisson, Councillor Chinaski, all in favor of removing these items? Okay. Now we'll vote on all these items except the ones mentioned, the C, E, L, M, O, P. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. So let's start at the beginning. Item C, refinancing of La Baron. Need a mover and a seconder to put it on the floor. Moved by Councillor Saucier, seconded by Councillor Brisson. Questions, comments on La Baron? Councillor Chinaski?
So I just propose that we go with at least the, 3.95, the
Prime rate?
the prime rate, so go whatever the prime rate is. So we're not, it's not costing us money.
Okay, so we have,
Does that make sense?
Through Mr. Mayor. We Councilor Chinaski. So you're saying that so that it doesn't cost us? I mean, just, yeah, so I understand your point. It's to go to prime rate, which would be 2.95. Just to give you context as well as to the impact on our budget and our reserves. Our current bank account, we receive interest which is equal to prime minus 2. So we receive 1.95%. So even with that 2.5%, we're still gaining a bit of interest for our reserves. But I think it's more than reasonable to go to prime as well. In the new policy, we are proposing prime plus 3, right? So, and just to give council context to the difference between 2.5% to 3.95 on a yearly basis for the resident or for the property owners. 2.5% was a payment of $631 per year, and 3.95 would be $667. So we're talking about $36 yearly, and it would generate about $6,000 more revenues for the township with pursuit of building.
Councillor Chinaski, so it reads currently that council receives report FS 42/2019 dated December 2nd, 2019, adopts a proposed bylaw authorizing the refinancing of the Le Baron loan. Would you like to add with it being a prime rate? À a prime rate, ça serait-tu assez clair, ça?
Oui, ça fonctionne. Puis aussi, non seulement j'ai envoyé à la FR une version révisée du bylaw ainsi que l'annexe avec des calculs pour 3.95%.
Parfait. So we have, it's proposed by Councillor Chinaski. Do we have a second? Conseil Brisson. So we have an amendment on the table. Everybody, questions about the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? The amendment is carried. So now we vote as amended. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Item E, four-way stop intersection. We need a mover and a seconder to put it on the table, moved by Councillor Janoski, seconded by Conseil Brisson. Currently, it's a resolution to put a light. Do you have another resolution ready, Monsieur Bourgeois? How would the resolution read, Madame Commander Laflamme?
Okay, I was getting back to the other one, I'm not sure. If you do it that way, we'll have to amend the bylaw as well. If we would have just said that we amend the percentage in the bylaw, we could have switched from 250 to 395. But we can,
Whatever is
yeah,
simplest.
we can come back and do the change to the bylaw after separately, in that case.
Monsieur Leduc?
I think the amendment should read just substitute 2.5 by 3.95.
Mr.
That'd be just the easiest change.
It was 250 by 3.95.
Yeah, whatever number it is,
Yeah.
but just substitute the number for another number.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was proposing.
Yeah, all members of council are okay with that? Yeah.
So instead of the
Right.
other amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we come back to the one for
Monsieur
this
Lebrun?
one, yes. So that's, so in this case, I would propose that you strike out a flasher in the proposed resolution and substitute it by oversized signs. That's what was proposed by Mr. Bourgeois.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder to put on the floor. Did we do that already?
Miss Councillor Tarnowski and Councillor Brisson.
Okay, so now we need, if somebody wants to propose the amendment, Councillor Tarnowski propose,
Can I
question?
just make an addition? So, that was just for oversized, but, I think there was a discussion about, the approach, like the warning approach or something like that, the stop ahead.
Oh, they're already in place, Monsieur
They're already in
Bourgeois?
place?
Yeah, that's why by saying oversized signs would include those 8 signs, so the approach and the stop signs.
Okay, and then, a discussion about the rumble thingamajiggies,
Do we recommend it at this point in time?
or is that operational?
That's operational, Monsieur
Okay.
Bourgeois?
It would be operational, but we're not recommending it from staff.
Okay. So, at this point in time, if we want to amend it, the recommendation is with the increased signage. We're okay with that, so do I need a mover and a seconder to propose that? Proposed by Conseil Brisson, seconded by Councillor Janoski. Any questions on that amendment? All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. On the amendment, as amended, all those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. We will now move on to item L, the user fee corrections for ice rental. Did we have any amendments for this?
I'm
The,
not sure why, like, I didn't ask to put it out, like, I had questions about it, but
well, we'll just vote on it as is then.
Mr. Mayor, what I had noted is the number 2. So instead of with, at number 3A2, for the conditions of the snow school days, so to strike out a responsible employee and substitute it by the employee responsible for the booking and then the rest.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Janoski.
Do we have one for the main first?
Yeah, for the main was Councillor Janoski and Conseil Brisson. They're on the floor. Now the amendment will go Councillor Janoski, Councillor Saucier. All those in favor of that amendment? All in favor as amended? Okay, that's item L. Item M is the community grants, PR 37-2019. That was for the King Cobra Russell and the $500 a treat item in Limoges. I need a mover and a seconder to put it on the table. Moved by Conseiller Saucier, seconded by Conseiller Tarnowski. Proposed amendments, Conseiller Brisson.
I would propose that we approve both.
Okay, we approve both. That's Conseiller Brisson. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Tarnowski, second. Questions on the amendment?
So I like the idea that we want them to purchase, and, so we're not redoing it, but it's my understanding that given the timeline right now, and for it to work right now, that this is already in play. I would only support this knowing that the other partners are supporting as well. And again, we're paying for the lights, but we're really paying for the expertise in installing those lights. And so I would support it, knowing that the other partners will support it. So I'm not sure how it will work out, but.
Monsieur Leduc, Madame Picard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm not too sure because like as of last week, they were not even sure they were getting the contributions and there's a number of contributions needed. I just looked at the list while we were on break and there's about 5 of them, who have not confirmed yet. And also Nation were requested $450, so I don't see why Russell was requested 5, but that's just the detail. Because I could ask them to confirm tomorrow if they received all the confirmations from those donors.
So we could perhaps, the way when it comes to that, it currently says to refuse an ad hoc grant in the amount of $500 to Limoges Optimist Club for the tree lighting on December 7, 2019. It could be amended to approve an ad hoc grant in the amount of $500 to Limoges Club Optimist for the tree lighting on December 7, 2019. I'm not confirming, but
Confirmation.
conditionally on the approval of all other partners. That way, if the other partners are not in, then we're not in. Would
Okay,
that be
because
acceptable?
right now there's 5 of them, with us it's 6. So
on
and-
condition of the other 5 other partners.
Okay, because I don't think I don't know this supplier, but maybe they don't need to pay the full amount ahead. So if they do, then they'll have a problem. December 7 is like in 4 days. So if nobody has confirmed by now, I'm not
I
too
think
sure.
at this point in time, we're willing to, I think council is willing to go there for $500, but we want to make sure that the other partners are going ahead as well in this tree lighting. Just want to mention as well that we had 2 members of the tree lighting Russell committee here this evening, and I had a conversation with them. And what they're doing and what they've done for the last 4 years is they've bought the lights. They leave the lights in the tree year round. That way they don't have to hire somebody to go back up and down. And 4 years later, there's some cleaning to do in the lights, but it's not a yearly up and down. Madame Guiton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So like we also discussed, like the firefighters, they're asking $300 from the firefighters. So the firefighters could probably give maybe some of their time to help out with that scissor lift and install those. Like they are, I think, more used to those kind of heights and that kind of equipment. And also I noticed that they're also expecting to have a net profit of $500.
Right. That kind of defeats the purpose then.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
becoming revenue generating as
Yeah,
opposed to
so
helping
I'm not
them.
too sure anyways.
Okay, conseiller Brisson?
Juste une couple de commentaires. Ben, pour commencer, c'est comme je disais, c'est un peu ma faute parce que je n'ai pas amené l'application assez vite, j'avais dit que j'étais pour le faire, mais c'est en fin de semaine que la chose, c'est comme ça que c'est dû, puis je sais que c'était dû pour en fait d'argent. Je sais qu'ils ont mentionné que le comité de citoyens, le comité de loisirs, au pire aller, était prêt à le backer pour cette chose-là, pour cette année, parce que, comme il a dit, c'est la dernière année. Pour la question de rester les lumières dedans puis le faire d'eux autres mêmes, c'est que la première année, qui était là 2 ans, 3 ans, ils l'avaient essayé, mais ils ont beaucoup d'écureuils dans ce coin-là. Ça fait qu'ils ont les lumières se sont toutes faites couper, il a fallu toutes qu'ils les jettent. C'était la raison aussi qu'ils ont dit on ne peut pas y rester dans l'arbre, comme la même chose. Puis je suis d'accord de leur demander, de dire OK, dans leur contrat de c'était 2000 ou 3000, je pense.
3000
3000. Combien qui est pour la lumière?
Ils n'ont pas les détails.
Non, mais c'est pas ça, mais pas cette année parce que c'est la dernière minute, là. Mais pour dire, si vous voulez encore l'année prochaine, revenez-nous que c'est-tu 100$ de différence dedans, puis comparé à HC. Mais c'est pour ça que Moi, je
On va pas
demanderais.
dépenser toute une soirée sur
Non, non,
un
c'est
dossier
pour-
de 500 piastres, là.
Non, non, c'est pour ça que.
We've got a
J'essaie-
mover and a seconder to approve it. Do we want to add the condition that it's based on the other participant?
Yes.
Because, okay, so on condition, the other 5 partners approve their funding. Is that a fair way of putting it, Monsieur Leduc?
So what if they get their financing, but from one organization? Does that meet your direction?
No, we just said the
Non, mais c'est pas ça. Mais si.
If somebody decides to cover the whole amount.
C'est ça.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
just yeah.
Le
Just the
le
ratio.
budget, c'est.
No, on top of our contribution, that one person or one association covers the balance. Are you okay with that?
So
Yes.
for
Because you-
example.
Because your point was that you're trying to get the 5 others to agree to contribute.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, well, the other balance of the amount is being funded by other organizations.
Ouais, so le montant total qui demande de tout le monde, c'est combien?
Oops. So without our contribution is $3,000, with ours is 35.
So we, on condition that that $3,000 is raised by other partners.
Ben, autrement, c'est plus francois.
Mais tu viens juste de, il
Ben
vient
non,
juste
mais-
de dire, il démontre un profit de 500 piastres.
Ouais.
So même s'il ramasse, tu sais,
S'ils font pas, c'est parce que c'est juste une tempête comme ça, on n'a pas le temps de le dire.
L'autre chose, c'était de 500 piastres, quand il avait mentionné, c'était de le mettre de côté pour l'année prochaine. mais
ben, qu'ils reviennent avec un plan l'année prochaine.
Ouais.
Councillor Associate?
And I would add that, that they purchase, that
Well-
it's not a rental, like this is a one-time
Like,
thing.
Yeah, I think we're too late at this point in time for that, for this year.
For this year, but
Okay.
that it's
But-
clear that it's not
but-
that they're not coming back every year.
Well, I think that'll be a discussion with staff, but if we add the condition on that the other $3,000 is raised, I think that essentially covers us. And I have to say, based on your comment, I guess squirrels in Russell Township are a lot more considerate than they are in Nation.
Parce qu'il y aurait tout
So I have a mover and a seconder for that amendment. Moved by Conseil Brisson, seconded by Councilor Tarnowski. All in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? Carried. All those in favor as amended? Carried. We gotta have fun doing this job, guys. Item O, renaming the Emblem Recreation Center ceremony report CAO 15/2019. Need a mover and a seconder, put on table, moved by Conseil Brisson, seconded by Councilor Tarnowski. What was the amendment we were?
2020.
Yeah, change the May 9th to 2020, but Monsieur Leduc, proceed.
I think council wanted to proceed with installation of the lettering at this time.
Yeah.
So then remove or in the days preceding the ceremony.
Okay. So on peut faire le changement, so I need a mover and a seconder for that amendment, moved by Councilor Associate, seconded by Councilor Tarnowski. Questions on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? Carried. All those in favor as amended? All those opposed? Carried. And the next one was P, that's it?
Yes.
Appointment of the municipal representative on county committee. Need a mover and a seconder to put on the table, moved by Councilor Tarnowski, seconded by Conseiller Brisson. The amendment here was just to add the name Jonathan Bourgon.
Yes.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder for that, moved by Councilor Associate, seconded by Councilor Tarnowski. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. All those in favor as amended? All those opposed? Carried. Add that to the list, Mr. Bourgon. And I believe that's it for all the changes, Madame Camille Laflamme, on the resolutions?
Yes.
Ouais, Q était correct, monsieur. C'est un rapport qui s'en vient back with conseil. Okay. We are now in bylaws. Y a-t-il des bylaws pour sortir, Madame Camille Laflamme?
Since we adopted Le Baron to just switch the percentage, we're okay, and the user fee will be amended the same way that it was, because
Perfect.
it was the same schedule as well.
Okay, so, motions that council approves the bylaws 2019-171 to 177 inclusively for first, second, and third reading as listed on the agenda. Need a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Sosi, seconded by Conseiller Brisson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. New business reports, we have none. Item 18, other business by council members. Myself, Christmas lights distribution and plan. I had a resident point out to me the disparity in how the lights were set up between the villages. I've heard comments from all 4 villages essentially. So I'm looking for council to give a direction to the administration that they be able to look at how the lights are distributed, bring back a report at one point in time with a game plan on how we can make it. You know, maybe even add a little bit to the budget. You know, once the report comes, you know, what's the cost involved? So perhaps adding some more lights. Personally, I'd like to see some different colors. I know that we have white here, we have white in Russell, we have blue in Limoges. You know, maybe we mix up some Christmas lights, but I'm looking if council is in agreement that we give a direction to staff just to bring something back so that we can look at fixing that issue. Councillor Sosi?
Yeah. No, I'm in agreement with that. I was brought to my attention too, and it was just it was discussed here tonight too, like people were saying, you know, are we getting less and less lights every year? So they're kind of sporadic, and I guess there's some really dark sections. So they were hoping to have a little, and I've noticed it seems to be either some are broken and they're not getting replaced. So
I think as well, it's nothing intentional.
Like we're growing.
Yeah, we're growing, but if you look at it, right, if you're looking at going towards the high school where there was really no much development, now it's just full. So we might have to look at adding some additional lights as we go down, but I'm just looking for a plan at this point in time. Conseiller Brisson?
Yeah, juste mentionner que c'est vraiment plus le village de Russell qui a l'air d'avoir un problème de lumière là, qui en manque, là, que c'est surtout là, je suis sûr qu'il en a été discuté. Là, mais
Ouais, ben c'est ça, c'est juste...
Site, dans le village site, ils sont bien contents, puis tout ça. Là, puis,
oui, mais c'est juste regarder c'est quoi les possibilités futures. Je regarde pas, je regarde pas à faire des changements. I'm not looking to move things this winter, just to be clear. But I think I think if people know that we're working on it and we're putting a plan together for next year, that I think that will be the way to move forward. Everybody's okay with giving that direction?
Yes.
We're okay with that direction, Monsieur Leduc? Okay. Item B, myself, proposal to move the regular council meeting of January 20th to January 13th. Conseiller Brisson clicked on this one, I totally missed it, but the January 20th, I'm actually in Toronto for Roma. And I know, and Conseiller Brisson's looking to go there. We only have the one meeting in January. I was suggesting January 13th. Now, Monsieur Leduc, I know from an administrative point, that might be a little bit of some challenges there.
Madam Conseil, yes, we're back, we're back, I shouldn't say that this way, but I'm back, and many of the directors are only returning to work, I think, as of the 6th of January. Normally, Christmas time is a time we take off where there's no meetings. Now, with this change, staff would be required to put reports together on the 6th and on the 7th. So I suggest the council to consider accepting the council package no later than Friday at 4:30, so that I don't expect much report to be prepared in that timeline, but I think we need the time also to prepare and review. So we'll be no later than 4:30, and hoping we can make it on a Thursday or a Friday noon. Timeline would be better, but I'd like just to have that timeline so that we understand we're moving up the meeting and people are coming back from holidays.
Okay. Councillor Knosky?
I have no problem with that. I know we had a parks meeting. Has that been moved already? Or is that
Well, we
We'll
just
have to move it
learned
on.
that today,
Okay.
so we'll have to change that.
So you guys are getting bumped. Everybody okay with that? So, Madame Camille Lafemme, on va faire le changement en réunion.
I'll bring a resolution for next meeting, but I'll send you all the meeting requests and ask for the change for the halls and all that in the meantime.
Okay, perfect. Item C, Councillor Sosi, tree lighting.
Merci. Yeah, it was just to bring everyone's attention to the 4th annual Light Up the Tree in Russell this Sunday, December 8th at 4:30. So that's at the, on Craig Street, right beside Russell Public School. And remind everyone to bring a non-perishable food donation for the Good Neighbors Food Bank. It's dimanche, le 8 décembre à 4h30. So c'est dimanche. Merci.
Okay. And item D, country concert, Christmas concert.
Right. So this is an event put on by the museum. We do a Christmas event every year, and so this is called a Country Christmas. It's just, it's not country music, it's actually more Celtic. And it's with the Gallaghers, and it's December 15th at 2 p.m. They are advertising, they're being optimistic, but that the Keith Boyd Museum, that it will be held, but if it's not ready, it's going to be held at the youth center. And they've already confirmed that. So it's on the website, it's on their Facebook page, and it's a wonderful family event, kind of old-fashioned Christmas at the museum.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Councillor Associate. Item 19, public consultations hearing, we have none. We'll take a 5-minute break, and at 9 o'clock we'll be back and we'll go into closed session. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for your report.
You don't want to go in close now? Okay.
Je peux fermer le meeting. Je peux-tu fermer le meeting?
Non. Non, c'est juste un break.
C'est que sinon.
Vous avez dit que c'est juste un break. Après, on va faire le.
Technically, c'est qu'il n'est pas supposé sortir, mais pour aller à la chambre de bain, on va parler après.
Salut, Gérard. Assez de dire avec moins de sarcasme. We don't use those microphones.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm good. Because I got, just,
The way I see it, the folding is
I got
actually. I'm just gonna suggest,
on est prêt?
So it's at the conseil
Okay, welcome back, everybody. So now we're going into closed session. Pursuant to section 2392, 3, and 3.1, motions moved in closed session at the hour of 9 p.m. to address matters pertaining to 1, employees' remuneration market study results presentation by consultant under section 2B, labor relations or employee negotiations. And item 3, because we removed item 2, item 3 is closed session minutes of the regular council meeting dated November 18th, 2019. Meeting mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Konoski, second by Councillor Toussaint. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. We are now in closed session. Thank you very much, everyone.